The sound of wet, sloppy kissing echoed in the silence of the dining room. It was disgusting. It was loud. And it was happening right across the table from me. I sat there, frozen. My hands rested on the cold velvet tablecloth. My eyes were open, staring blankly ahead, fixed on a point of darkness. To them, I was a statue. To them, I was the useless, blind wife who couldn't even cut her own steak. Julian, stop it. A female voice giggled, high-pitched, fake. It was Elena, my best friend, my nurse. Why should I? Julian's voice was deep, dripping with arrogance. She can't see us. She's just a piece of furniture, babe. My heart hammered against my ribs. A piece of furniture. That was what I had become to the man I vowed to love forever. Today was our 3rd wedding anniversary. The crystal glasses clinked. The smell of expensive truffle risotto filled the air, but all I could taste was the bile rising in my throat. Julian tapped his fork against his wine glass. Cling, cling, cling. Serena, he called out. His voice shifted instantly. It became warm, concerned, the voice of the perfect husband the world adored. Darling, are you enjoying the food I had the chef prepare your favorite? I forced the corners of my lips up, a practiced smile. It's delicious, Julian. Thank you. Good, he said. Then, the sound of fabric rustling. He was leaning over. Not to me, to her. I heard the distinct smack of a kiss on a cheek. Elena suppressed a laugh. Here, Julian said, his voice thick with mockery. Open your mouth, darling. Let me feed you. You know you always make a mess when you try to do it yourself. I unclenched my jaw. I opened my mouth like an obedient doll. The metal spoon hit my teeth hard. Clang. Pain shot through my gums. He did it on purpose. He shoved a spoonful of hot risotto into my mouth. It burned my tongue. I swallowed it. I didn't flinch. I couldn't. Is it hot? Elena asked. Her voice feigned worry. Oh no. Julian, be careful. She's fragile. She's not fragile. Julian scoffed. She's just broken. I gripped the napkin in my lap. My knuckles turned white. Broken. Is that what you think? Julian. You think the car accident took away my spirit along with my sight. You have no idea. I have a surprise for you, Julian announced. The chair scraped against the floor. He stood up. I heard the snap of a velvet box opening. Happy anniversary, Serena? He walked behind me. His hands brushed against my neck. His fingers were cold, clammy. I suppressed a shiver of revulsion. It's a diamond necklace, he whispered into my ear. Custom made. Van Cleef and Arpels. It cost me $5 million, but you are worth every cent, my love. $5 million. He clasped the necklace around my neck. The metal touched my skin. It was light, too light, and it was warm. Real gold and diamonds are cold at first touch. This felt like plastic, or cheap alloy. I reached up and touched the pendant. It was rough, poorly cut. It's beautiful, Julian. I lied. My voice trembled. I can feel the weight of your love. Elena burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. She covered her mouth quickly, turning it into a cough. Sorry, choked on my wine. Careful, Elena, Julian said, amusement dancing in his tone. Don't ruin the moment. My wife is admiring her diamond. I knew what it was. It was probably a $50 piece of trash from a souvenir shop. He had likely spent the $5 million on the new penthouse he just bought for Elena. I saw the bank transfer notification on his iPad last week. Yes, I saw it. Because I wasn't blind. Not anymore. My vision had returned a month ago. The doctors said it was a miracle. I wanted to run home and tell him. I wanted to surprise him. But when I walked into his office that day, I saw them. I saw Julian and Elena on his desk. I saw the way he looked at her with the passion he used to look at me, and I heard them planning. When the old man dies, we get everything. Then we can dump the blind cripple in a state facility. That day, Serena Thorne died, and the woman sitting at this table was born. We should propose a toast, Elena said. She stood up. I heard the heavy pour of liquid. To Julian, the most devoted husband in New York. To me, Julian agreed. And to Serena, Elena added, her voice dripping with venom, for being so understanding. She walked over to me. I could hear the heels clicking on the marble floor. Click, 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 like a predator stalking wounded prey. Here, Serena, let me help you with your glass. She didn't hand me the glass. Instead, I felt a sudden cold splash hit my chest. Oops! Elena shrieked. Red liquid soaked instantly into my white silk dress. It spread fast, sticky and cold, seeping through to my skin. It felt like blood. It looked like blood. Oh my God! Elena cried out, her voice devoid of any real apology. I tripped Julian. I'm so clumsy. Look at her dress. It's ruined. I sat there, gasping from the shock of the cold liquid. The vintage Cabernet Sauvignon dripped from my chin. It stained the fake diamond necklace. Julian didn't move to help me. He didn't offer a napkin. He didn't call for the maids. He laughed. It was a low, cruel chuckle. Well, he said, it's actually an improvement. That white dress was boring. Now it has some color. She looks like a pig at a slaughterhouse, Elena whispered, loud enough for me to hear. Elena, Julian warned, but he was laughing too. Don't be mean. She can't see how ridiculous she looks. Ignorance is bliss, right? Tears pricked my eyes, real tears, not from sadness, but from pure, unadulterated rage. The humiliation burned hotter than the risotto. They were treating me like an animal, like a prop in their twisted little play. I stammered, making my voice sound weak and pathetic. I feel sticky. Julian, please. Stop whining, Julian snapped. The loving husband act was gone. It's just wine. Go clean yourself up. You're ruining my appetite. But I don't know where the bathroom is. I whimpered. I reached out a hand, groping the air. Ugh, Elena groaned. She's so useless. Do I have to do everything? Just point her in the right direction, Julian said, cutting into his steak. She can figure it out. If she hits a wall, she hits a wall. Maybe it'll knock some sense into her. Elena grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my flesh. She yanked me up from the chair. This way, princess. She hissed in my ear. She dragged me toward the hallway. She didn't guide me. She pushed me. I stumbled, purposely catching my foot on the rug, and fell to my knees. My knees hit the hard marble. Pain shot up my legs. Oh, look, Elena laughed, looking down at me. She's kneeling. Finally know your place, don't you? Get up, Julian shouted from the table. Stop embarrassing me. I scrambled to my feet, using the wall for support. I kept my eyes unfocused. I let the tears fall. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry, Julian. Just go, he roared. Elena gave me one final shove toward the guest bathroom. Don't come back until you stop smelling like a winery. I stumbled into the bathroom. My hand shook as I fumbled for the lock. Click! I locked the door. The silence of the bathroom was deafening. Outside, I could hear them laughing again. They were probably kissing now, celebrating their little victory over the blind cripple. I stood there for a moment, my breathing ragged, my chest heaved up and down. The red wine stain on my dress was cold and heavy. Slowly, I raised my head. I looked into the mirror. I didn't stare blankly. I didn't look past my reflection. My pupils contracted. My focus sharpened. I looked straight into my own blue eyes. They were red-rimmed. filled with tears, but they were clear, crystal clear. I saw the stain. It covered my entire chest, a jagged map of their cruelty. I saw the cheap, ugly necklace around my neck. It looked like a dog collar. I reached up and ripped the necklace off. The clasp broke. I threw it into the sink. Clatter. Trash, I whispered. My voice wasn't weak anymore. It was cold. It was steady. It was the voice of a Waldorf. I turned on the faucet. I watched the water run clear. I splashed it on my face, washing away the tears. I grabbed a towel and dabbed at the wine. I wasn't blind, I saw everything. I saw the way Julian looked at her. I saw the way Elena smirked. I saw the disgust in their eyes. And I saw something else. I reached into the pocket of my dress. My hand closed around the small, sleek device I had concealed there. A mini voice recorder. The red light was still blinking. Recording. I stopped the recording. "Enjoy your dinner, Julian," I said to my reflection. A dark, terrifying smile spread across my face. It wasn't the smile of a wife. It was the smile of a widow in waiting. Eat well, because it's going to be the last peaceful meal you ever have. I looked down at the wine stain again. It didn't look like defeat anymore. It looked like war paint. They wanted to play games fine. I would play. But they forgot one thing. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But the woman who pretends to be blind, she is the executioner. The cold dampness of the wine-soaked dress clung to my skin like a second layer of shame. I took a deep breath, staring at the bathroom door handle. My hand hovered over it, behind this door. I was Serena the Avenger, sharp-eyed and dangerous. But out there, I had to be Serena the victim, broken, blind, pathetic. I adjusted my expression. I let my eyelids droop, clouding the focus in my gaze until the world became a soft, hazy blur. I slumped my shoulders, practicing the posture of defeat. Showtime. I unlocked the door, click. I stepped out into the hallway, shuffling my feet. I reached out, my fingers grazing the textured wallpaper, pretending to search for guidance. "Took you long enough," Julian's voice boomed from the living room. It wasn't warm anymore. It was impatient, businesslike. "Come here, sit down. We have things to discuss before dessert." I followed the sound of his voice. I walked slowly, counting my steps. 12 steps to the sofa. I sat down, making sure to fumble a bit, my hand patting the cushion as if verifying it was there. What things?" I asked, keeping my voice small. "Just paperwork, darling," Julian said. I heard the rustle of stiff paper. Legal documents. "Since your unfortunate condition doesn't seem to be improving, I spoke to the lawyers. We need to secure the company's future." He placed a pen in my hand. It was a Mont Blanc, heavy, cold. "It's just a temporary power of attorney." He lied. His voice was smooth, like oil on water. "It allows me to sign checks for the house staff and manage your medical bills without bothering you. You know how stress gives you migraines." I gripped the pen. I lowered my head, pretending to listen. But my eyes darted down beneath my lashes. I saw the document. It wasn't a power of attorney. At the top, in bold, capital letters, irrevocable share transfer agreement. He wasn't asking for permission to pay the bills. He was asking me to sign away my entire inheritance. The Waldorf Empire, 51% of the stock. Everything my father built. He wanted it all. "Julian," I whispered, feigning hesitation. I should probably have Uncle Marcus look at this. You know, my father always said." "Your father is dead, Serena," Julian snapped. He slammed his hand on the coffee table. Bang! I flinched, dropping the pen. "God, you are difficult," he hissed. "I am trying to help you. You are blind. You are useless. Do you think you can run $1 billion auction house when you can't even find the bathroom? The board is laughing at you. They want to oust you. I am the only one protecting you. I'm sorry, I stammered, tears springing to my eyes instantly. I didn't mean to upset you. Then pick up the pen, he ordered. I crouched down, patting the rug, searching for the pen I could clearly see lying 2 inches from my left knee. I touched it, then fumbled, letting it roll away a bit before grabbing it. Pathetic, a female voice sneered. Elena, she was back. I hadn't heard her enter. She must have been in the kitchen. Here, let me help. Julian grunted. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight. Bruising. He shoved the pen back into my fingers and forced my hand toward the signature line. Just sign here, right here, and it's over. My heart pounded against my ribs. If I signed this, I lost everything. If I didn't, he might kill me right here. I needed a distraction. I needed to stall. My hand shook violently. I let the pen slip again, drawing a jagged line of ink across the table instead of the paper. Oops, I gasped. Damn it, Serena! Julian roared. He snatched the paper away before the ink could stain the document. Look what you did. You almost ruined the contract. My hand. I'm so nervous, I cried. She needs to calm down, Elena said. Her voice was too sweet, cloying. She's shaking like a leaf. Julian, let me get her some tea, some nice hot chamomile tea to soothe her nerves. Fine, Julian muttered, wiping the table with his handkerchief. Hurry up. I want this done tonight. I sat there, wringing my hands. I watched Elena walk to the kitchen. I saw her bypass the kettle. I saw her go straight to the instant hot water dispenser, the one set to 200 degrees Fahrenheit for sterilization. She filled a large ceramic mug. She didn't put a tea bag in it. It was just water, scalding, boiling water. She walked back toward me. Her eyes were fixed on my hands. There was a smile on her face, a cruel, sadistic smile. She wasn't bringing me a drink. She was bringing me a weapon. Here you go, sweetie, Elena cooed as she approached. I knew what was coming. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to move, to dodge, to kick her. But I couldn't. If I dodged a silent attack, they would know I could see. If they knew I could see, they would realize I knew about the theft, the cheating, the lies. They would kill me. Tonight, I had to take it. I had to let her burn me. Thank you, Elena, I said, reaching out blindly with both hands. Oops! Elena tripped on nothing. The mug tilted. The water didn't splash. It poured, a solid sheet of liquid fire. It hit my right hand, the hand that refused to sign. Ah! The scream ripped from my throat. It wasn't acting. It was pure, white-hot agony. The water scalded my skin instantly. It felt like my flesh was melting off the bone. The pain traveled up my arm, shocking my nervous system. I fell off the sofa, clutching my hand to my chest, curling into a ball on the rug. My hand! My hand! I sobbed, rocking back and forth. The skin was already turning a furious, angry red. Blisters were forming before my eyes. Oh my God, Elena gasped, putting a hand over her mouth. I slipped the rug. It's so slippery, Julian. I didn't mean to. Julian didn't rush to me. He didn't check my burn. He sighed, a long, exasperated sigh. Great, he muttered. Just great. Now she can't hold a pen at all. It hurts, please. Call a doctor. It burns, I begged, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the sweat on my forehead. Stop screaming, Julian shouted down at me. It's just a little hot water. Don't be such a drama queen. Go run it under a tap. It's blistering, Julian, I wailed. I said shut up. He kicked my leg, not hard enough to break a bone, but hard enough to bruise, hard enough to show his contempt. You are useless, can't sign a paper, can't hold a cup, can't do anything right. You are nothing but a burden. I'll take her to the kitchen sink, Elena offered, grabbing my uninjured arm and hauling me up. She dug her nails into my bicep. Come on, clumsy, let's get some ice. We can't have you ruining Julian's night anymore. She dragged me to this kitchen. She shoved my hand under the faucet and blasted the cold water. The temperature change sent shockwaves of pain through me, but it was better than the heat. Stay here, she hissed. Don't move until I tell you. She turned and walked back to the living room, leaving me alone in the dark kitchen. I stood there, trembling. My hand was throbbing with a pulse of its own. I looked down at it. The skin was peeling. It was a second-degree burn, at least. I bit my lip until it bled to keep from making another sound. Endure it. I told myself, remember this pain. Every blister is a debt they owe you. From the living room, I heard Julian's phone ring. Quiet, Julian told Elena. It's the fixer. I froze. I turned off the tap so the sound of water wouldn't drown out their voices. I crept to the doorway, pressing my back against the wall. Yeah, Julian said into the phone. What is it? Silence. Then Julian's voice dropped an octave. It became cold, menacing. What do you mean the mechanic is talking? I paid him 50 grand to cut those brake lines. My breath hitched, my heart stopped. Brake lines! The accident, the crash on the I-95 that took my sight. The police said it was a mechanical failure, a freak accident. It wasn't. Handle it, Julian growled. I don't care how. Make him disappear, just like we planned for her. He paused, listening. No, she's still here, Julian said. Glancing toward the kitchen, I pulled back into the shadows just in time. Harder to kill than a cockroach. The crash only blinded her, and now she's refusing to sign the transfer papers. Elena giggled in the background. Maybe we should try the stairs next time, or an overdose. Depressed blind wife takes too many sleeping pills. It's a classic. I'm working on the asylum angle, Julian replied to the person on the phone. Dr. Weber is preparing the diagnosis. Paranoid schizophrenia. Once she's committed, I get power of attorney automatically. Then, well, accidents happen in mental hospitals all the time. He laughed. A dry, soulless sound. Yeah, don't worry. The Waldorf fortune will be liquid by next month. I'll wire your cut then. Click, he hung up. I slid down the kitchen wall, clutching my burned hand. The physical pain was gone. Or rather, it was drowned out by a horror so cold it froze my blood. They didn't just hate me. They didn't just want my money. They had tried to murder me. And they were going to try again. I looked at my hand. The blisters were ugly, filled with fluid. I looked at the knife block on the counter. The chef's knife glinted in the moonlight. I could walk out there. I could stab him. I could end it right now. No. That was too easy. Prison was too good for him. Death was too quick. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to lose everything. I wanted him to be the one begging for death. I needed to get out of here, tonight. If I stayed, I would end up in a padded cell or a coffin. I stood up. I wiped my face. I needed allies. I needed power. I remembered the name Julian had cursed 1,000 times. The man who hated Julian Thorne more than anyone on Wall Street. The man who had tried to buy my father's company years ago but was blocked by Julian. Gabriel Stone. I needed to find Gabriel Stone. Serena, Elena called out from the living room. Stop sulking. Julian wants to try the signature again. I looked at the back door of the kitchen. It led to the garden. And beyond the garden, the service gate. I wasn't going back to that sofa. I grabbed a bottle of cold water from the fridge to hold against my burn. I kicked off my heels so I could run silently. Serena. Julian's voice was closer now. He was coming to the kitchen. I opened the back door. The cold night air hit my face. Run, I whispered to myself. And for the first time in a year, I ran without fear of the dark, because the real darkness wasn't outside. It was inside that house, wearing the face of my husband. The gravel of the driveway bit into the soles of my bare feet like shattered glass. Every step was a sharp, jagged reminder of reality, but the pain in my feet was nothing compared to the screaming agony of my right hand. The blisters were rising, tight and hot, throbbing in rhythm with my frantic heartbeat. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Behind me, the mansion, the gilded cage I had called home for 3 years, loomed like a monster in the dark. The lights in the kitchen snapped on, casting long, distorted shadows across the lawn. "Serena!" Julian's voice tore through the night air. It wasn't the voice of a husband calling for his wife. It was the roar of an owner calling for a runaway dog. "Security, seal the gates. She's in the garden." I threw myself behind a manicured hedge of hydrangeas. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. I pressed my burned hand against the cold, wet leaves, praying the sensation would numb the fire in my nerves. I watched through the gaps in the leaves. Flashlights beamed into existence, cutting through the darkness. 3 security guards were sprinting from the perimeter. They were Julian's private dogs, ex-mercenaries he paid to keep people out, and to keep me in. "Check the perimeter," one shouted. "She's blind. She can't have gone far. Look for a woman stumbling around." "She's blind." That assumption was my only shield. They expected a helpless invalid groping for a wall. They didn't expect a woman who had memorized the estate's layout with perfect clarity for the past month. I waited until the beams of light swept past my hiding spot, moving toward the main gate. Then, I bolted. I didn't run toward the main exit. That was suicide. I ran toward the east wall, where the service entrance for the catering trucks was located. The wind picked up, howling through the trees. A crack of thunder shook the ground, and the sky opened up. Freezing rain began to pour, soaking my dress instantly. The cold water stung my burn, making me grit my teeth so hard my jaw ached. I reached the service gate. It was locked. A heavy electronic keypad glowed red in the darkness. Steps were approaching, heavy boots splashing in the mud. Over there, I saw movement by the east wall. I stared at the keypad. If I were blind, this would be the end. I would be trapped, dragged back, sedated, and waking up in a padded room with a lobotomy scheduled for noon. But I saw the numbers. 1984, Julian's birth year. The narcissist couldn't even pick a code that wasn't about him. I punched the numbers in with my left hand, my shaking fingers slipping on the wet keys. Beep, 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 click. The magnetic lock disengaged. "Hey, stop!" A beam of light hit me. I didn't look at it. I shoved the heavy metal gate open just enough to squeeze through and slipped into the darkness of the public road. I heard the gate slam shut behind me, the automatic lock re-engaging. Damn it, she got out! I heard them shouting from the other side. "Get the car! Go around!" I was out, but I wasn't safe. I was on the winding coastal road of the Hamptons. No streetlights. Just endless stretches of forest and cliffs dropping into the ocean. The rain was blinding now, a torrential downpour that washed away the blood from my feet but couldn't wash away the fear. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. I ran in the middle of the road, praying for a car, praying for anyone other than Julian. Headlights appeared in the distance, twin orbs of white light cutting through the storm. Was it them? Was it Julian's Range Rover? I squinted. The lights were too low, too wide. Not an SUV, a sedan, a luxury sedan. I made a choice between death and a gamble. I stopped running. I stood in the dead center of the lane. I raised my uninjured arm. My wet hair plastered to my face, my white dress clinging to my shivering body like a shroud. The car was coming fast, 50 miles per hour, 60. It didn't slow down. "Stop," I whispered, though the wind snatched the word away. The car rushed toward me. I locked my eyes on the windshield. I didn't flinch. If I died here, at least Julian wouldn't get the satisfaction of killing me himself. At the last possible second, tires screeched. The sound was deafening, the smell of burnt rubber mixed with the rain. The massive black grille of the car stopped inches from my knees. The hood ornament, the spirit of ecstasy, gleamed menacingly in the headlights. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, black, tinted windows, a hearse for the living. For a moment, nothing happened. The engine purred, a low, dangerous rumble. Then the rear door opened. A man stepped out. An umbrella unfolded with a sharp snap, held by a driver who had rushed around. But the man waved him off. He stepped into the rain, unbothered by the storm. He was tall, imposing. He wore a bespoke black suit that probably cost more than my life was currently worth. His face was sharp angles and shadows, illuminated by the headlights. His eyes were the color of steel cold, calculating, and devoid of pity. Gabriel Stone, the shark of Wall Street, the man who bought companies just to dismantle them for sport. He looked at me. He looked at my bare, bleeding feet. He looked at my burned hand, clutching my chest. He looked at my soaked dress. "You have 5 seconds to explain why you are blocking my car," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and terrifyingly indifferent. "Before I run you over." He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't offer a coat. "I am Serena Thorne," I said. My voice was hoarse, but I forced it to be steady. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of recognition. "The blind wife of that incompetence, Julian Thorne." "I'm not blind," I said. He paused. He stepped closer, peering into my eyes. The rain dripped from his dark hair. "Is that so? Then you must see that you look like a drowned rat." "I have something you want," I said, ignoring the insult. I stepped forward, shivering violently, but holding his gaze. "You want Julian's empire. You want to destroy him." "I can destroy him without a barefoot woman bleeding on my upholstery," Gabriel drawled. He turned to get back in the car. "I know about the Cayman accounts," I shouted over the wind. He stopped. His hand froze on the door handle. "I know where he hides the money," I continued, desperate now. "I know about the tax evasion. I know about the bribes to the zoning commission. And I have proof." Gabriel turned back slowly. The indifference was gone, replaced by a predatory curiosity. "Proof. I have recordings." I lied. Well, partially lied. I had one recording, but I could get more. "Save me from him, and I will hand you the keys to his destruction on a silver platter." He studied me. He was weighing the risk. He looked at the road behind me. In the distance, the lights of an SUV were approaching fast. "Julian!" Gabriel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just found a loaded gun lying on the sidewalk. "Get in," he commanded. I didn't wait. I scrambled into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. The interior smelled of expensive leather and sandalwood. It was warm, safe. The driver slammed the door shut just as the SUV's headlights swept over us. "Drive," Gabriel ordered as he settled in beside me. The car surged forward, smooth and silent. I sank back into the leather seats, my body finally giving in to the shock. I watched out the rear window. Julian's SUV flew past us in the opposite direction, chasing a ghost. I looked at Gabriel. He was pouring a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter built into the armrest. "You're bleeding on my leather," he noted, taking a sip of whiskey. "I'll pay for the cleaning," I whispered, clutching my throbbing hand. "Oh, you will pay," Gabriel said softly, turning to look at me. "But not with money, Mrs. Thorne. You sold your soul to the devil tonight. Make sure you're ready to honor the contract." I closed my eyes. The devil is better than the monster I married. Meanwhile, back at the Thorne estate, Julian stormed into the master bedroom, his face twisted in a mask of fury. His suit was soaked, his hair plastered to his skull. "Where is she?" he screamed, overturning a vase of lilies. "Crash!" "She's not in the garden, sir," the head of security reported. standing nervously in the doorway. The dogs lost the scent at the road. The rain washed it away. "She's blind," Julian roared, grabbing the man by his collar. "A blind woman cannot outrun 3 trained guards unless—" He froze. A thought, a terrible, impossible thought, began to take root in his mind. He shoved the guard away and looked around the room. He needed to find her passport, her jewelry, anything to track her. He ran to the bedside table. There, resting on the pillow where she used to sleep, was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't the share transfer agreement. It was a document dated 3 days ago. Petition for dissolution of marriage, divorce papers, and at the bottom, in clear, steady, elegant handwriting that required perfect vision to execute, was her signature. Serena Waldorf Thorne. And below the signature, a short note scrawled in red lipstick. I saw everything. Julian stared at the paper. His hands began to shake. The blood drained from his face. "Elena!" he screamed, his voice cracking with terror. "Elena, get in here!" Elena came running in, still holding an ice pack to her head where she had slipped earlier. "What did you find her?" Julian held up the paper. His eyes were wide, manic. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew everything." "What do you mean?" Elena snatched the paper. She read the note. Her jaw dropped. She could see, but we kissed in front of her," Julian gasped, sinking onto the bed. "We talked about the money. We talked about the brake lines. We talked about the asylum." He looked up at Elena, and for the first time, the arrogance was gone. Only pure, unadulterated panic remained. "She's not a victim, Elena, she's a witness." Outside, the storm raged on, but the real storm was just beginning, and it was heading straight for them. Chapter 4. The Mystery Bidder. 30 days? That's how long it takes for a burn to turn into a scar. I sat in the leather swivel chair of Gabriel Stone's penthouse office, overlooking the glitter of Manhattan. The city looked like a circuit board from up here, cold, electric, and unfeeling. I traced the raised, pink keloid scar on the back of my right hand with my left thumb. It was an ugly, jagged map of pain. But to me, it was beautiful. It was a reminder. "Are you ready, Mrs. Thorne?" Gabriel leaned against the doorframe. He was holding 2 glasses of whiskey. He didn't look at my scar. He looked at my eyes, in the past month. He hadn't asked for anything in return for his protection, not yet. He had given me the best doctors, a new wardrobe, and a crash course in corporate warfare. "Don't call me that," I said, my voice steady. "Serena Thorne died in the rain that night. You can call me Bitter 7. Gabriel smirked. A dangerous glint appeared in his steel-gray eyes. He walked over and placed a tablet in front of me. "The auction starts in 2 minutes. Julian is sweating through his Armani suit right about now." On the screen, a live feed from the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel flickered to life. It was the Estate of the Vanished auction. That was what the media called it. Julian had told the world I had run away due to mental instability and was missing. Now, he was selling off my mother's heirlooms to pay his gambling debts and the blackmail money to the hitmen he hired to find me. "He looks terrible," I noted, zooming in on Julian's face. He did. Dark circles bruised his eyes. His skin was sallow. He was nervously tapping his leg. Next to him, Elena was draped in a red dress, my red dress. She looked bored, checking her phone. "He needs $10 million by midnight to stop the bank from seizing the company accounts," Gabriel explained, taking a sip of his drink. "If this auction fails, he is finished." "He won't fail," I said, logging into the anonymous bidding system, "because we are going to make him think he's won the lottery before we rip the ticket up in his face." At the Plaza Hotel, the air smelled of old money and desperation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced, his British accent crisp. "Lot 45, the Midnight Star, a 12-carat sapphire necklace, formerly the property of the Waldorf family. Julian sat up straight. This was it, the centerpiece. He needed this to go for at least 8 million. Do we have a starting bid of 2 million? 2 million, a paddle went up in the front row. 3 million, another voice called out. Julian exhaled. Good. There was interest. He grabbed Elena's hand under the table, squeezing it hard. If this sells high, we can pay off the fixers and finally leave the country. We can go to the Maldives, babe. Elena rolled her eyes. Just sell the damn thing. Julian, I'm tired of living in a hotel. 4 million? 5 million? The price was climbing. Julian's greed began to replace his fear. 5 million was good, but he wanted more. 7 million going once. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Ding! A sound echoed from the large screen behind the podium. Online bid. We have a new bid from an online participant, the auctioneer announced, adjusting his glasses. Bidder number 7 offers $10 million. The room gasped. A jump of 3 million that was unheard of. Julian's eyes widened. $10 million who is bidder 7. Who cares? Elena whispered, her eyes lighting up. That's double what we expected. 10 million going once? I sat in the penthouse, my finger hovering over the bid button. Toy with him, Gabriel whispered in my ear. He was standing behind my chair, his breath cool against my neck. Make him believe he's invincible. I pressed the button again. Ding. Correction. The auctioneer stuttered. Bidder 7 has raised their own bid, $15 million. What? Julian stood up halfway. They are bidding against themselves. It's a power move. A man at the next table whispered. Someone wants that necklace bad. 20 million, I typed. The ballroom erupted into chaos. $20 million for a sapphire worth maybe 6. It was madness. Julian was shaking. He was practically salivating. 20 million. That solved everything. He could pay the debts, buy a new house, and still have enough to hunt Serena down. Oh my God, Julian, we're rich, Elena squealed, clutching his arm. Wait, Julian said, his paranoia spiking. Why go so high? Don't question it, Elena hissed. Just take the money. 20 million going once, twice. I looked at Gabriel. Now. Now, Gabriel said, drop the hammer. I didn't bid again, but I hit the message function attached to the priority bid. Ding! We have a message from the bidder, the auctioneer said. Looking confused, he read the screen. His face went pale. Read it, someone from the crowd shouted. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. The message reads, I withdraw my bid. Upon closer inspection of the catalog, the item is a forgery, just like the owner's grief. Silence, absolute, suffocating silence. What? Julian screamed. That's a lie, it's authentic. Bidder 7 has retracted the bid based on Authentication Clause 4B, the auctioneer said, looking at his monitor. The bid is cancelled. No, Julian yelled. You can't do that. And since the previous bidders have also withdrawn due to the allegation of forgery, the auctioneer continued, his voice icy. The item is passed. Lot 45 is unsold. Unsold? Julian choked. But I need that money. Next item, the auctioneer dismissed him. Julian collapsed into his chair. The 20 million vanished like smoke. It's okay, Elena said frantically. We still have the painting. The weeping woman. That's worth at least 5. Lot 46, the auctioneer announced. An oil painting. The weeping woman. I smiled. This was the trap. Gabriel, I said. Execute the shill protocol. Gabriel typed a command into his phone. Done. Elena's phone is hacked. She's about to receive a text from you. In the ballroom, Elena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. If you want to save Julian, bid on the painting. I have a buyer lined up for 50 million tomorrow. Trust me. Anonymous friend. Elena looked at the text. She looked at Julian. who was holding his head in his hands. Defeated. She thought she was smart. She thought she could save the day and be the hero. 1 million, the auctioneer started. 5 million, Elena shouted, raising her hand. Julian looked at her in horror. Elena? What are you doing? We are the sellers. You can't bid. Trust me, she hissed. I'm driving the price up. I have a buyer. Bidder 7 offers 6 million, the auctioneer said. 10 million, Elena shrieked. She was caught in the adrenaline. 15 million, I countered from the penthouse. 20, Elena yelled. Elena, stop. Julian grabbed her arm. You don't have 20 millions. Shut up, Julian, I know what I'm doing. She shook him off. 25 million, I typed. 30 million, Elena screamed. She stood up, her face flushed with excitement. She was winning. She was going to sell it for 50 million later. 30 million from the lady in red, the auctioneer said. He looked at the screen. Bidder 7. I looked at Gabriel. He nodded. Let her have it, I said. I closed the laptop. Going once, going twice. The room was silent. Elena was grinning wildly, waiting for me to bid 35. Sold, the gavel banged, crack, to the lady in red for $30 million. Applause broke out. Elena froze, the smile slid off her face. Wait, she whispered. Why did they stop? You bought it. Julian stared at her, his face turning purple. Elena, you just bought my painting for $30 million. But the buyer? Elena stammered. She looked at her phone. The text message had disappeared. Deleted. I need to collect the buyer's premium. The auction house manager appeared at their table instantly, flanked by 2 security guards. That will be 20% of the hammer price, $6 million, payable immediately by certified check or wire. 6 million? Elena gasped. We don't have... You bid, you pay, madam, the manager said coldly. If you cannot pay, this is fraud. We will have to involve the police. Fraud? Julian squeaked. Julian, do something, Elena cried, grabbing his lapels. Me, you did this. Julian shoved her away. You stupid cow, you just bankrupted us. Security, the manager snapped. Escort Mr. Thorne and Ms. Vane to the holding office and call the NYPD. From the penthouse, I watched as Julian and Elena were dragged out of the ballroom, screaming at each other. It was humiliating. It was public. It was perfect. Gabriel handed me the glass of whiskey. To the weeping woman, he toasted. To the weeping man, I corrected, clinking my glass against his. My phone buzzed. A notification from the security app connected to the hidden cameras I had left in the Waldorf mansion. Motion detected master bedroom. I opened the app. A figure was in the bedroom, but it wasn't the police, and it wasn't a thief. It was a man in a black tactical suit. He was tossing the room. He wasn't looking for jewelry. He was looking for me. He stopped at the nightstand and picked up the divorce papers Julian had left there. He pulled out a lighter and burned them. Then, he looked directly into the hidden camera lens. He knew it was there. He held up a sign written on a notepad. Game on, Serena. My blood ran cold. Gabriel, I whispered, my hand trembling slightly as I showed him the screen. Who is that? Gabriel's face hardened. The playfulness vanished. He set his glass down. That, Gabriel said, his voice grim, is the one person Julian is afraid of, his older brother, the real head of the Thorne family. I thought he was dead, I breathed. He was, Gabriel said, until you woke him up. The holding room at the NYPD precinct smelled of stale coffee, disinfectant, and the pungent sweat of desperation. This is your fault, Julian hissed, pacing the small gray room like a caged rat. His tie was undone, his expensive suit rumpled. $30 million. Elena, You bid $30 million on a painting I bought at a flea market for $5,000. I was trying to help, Elena shrieked, huddled on the metal bench, hugging her knees. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black, teary streaks. The text message said there was a buyer. It was Serena, I know it was her. Serena is blind, Julian roared, kicking the metal table. Clang! She's a wandering cripple. How could she text you? How could she hack the auction system? Use your brain. Then who? Elena sobbed. Who hates us this much? Before Julian could answer, the heavy steel door buzzed. Psst. It swung open. Julian straightened up, smoothing his hair. Finally, the lawyers. I told them to bring the checkbook. But it wasn't a lawyer. The man standing in the doorway blocked out the fluorescent light from the hallway. He was massive, over 6 feet tall, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit his broad shoulders like armor. He had a shaved head and a scar running through his left eyebrow, cutting through a face that looked like it was chiseled from granite. He held a silver-tipped cane in his hand, though he clearly didn't need it to walk. Julian's face went white. All the color drained away, leaving him looking like a corpse. His knees actually buckled. Victor? Julian whispered. The name came out as a strangled gasp. Brother. Elena looked up, confused. Brother, I thought he died in the plane crash in Macau. Victor Thorne stepped into the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He didn't look at Elena. He looked at Julian with eyes that were black, empty voids. Get up, Victor said. His voice was low, a rumble of thunder that shook the floorboards. Victor, I can explain, Julian stammered, backing away until he hit the wall. The auction, it was a setup. Victor didn't blink. He turned to the police captain standing nervously behind him. Is the debt settled? Yes, Mr. Thorne, the captain said, clutching a cashier's check. $6 million, paid in full, and the fraud charges have been misplaced. Good, Victor said. He turned back to Julian. Walk, before I drag you. The ride in the stretch limousine was silent, a suffocating, heavy silence. Elena sat in the corner, terrified, trying to make herself invisible. Julian sat opposite Victor, his hands trembling in his lap. Victor poured himself a glass of water. He took a slow, deliberate sip. Then, he placed the glass down on the console. 3 years, Victor said softly. I gave you 3 years to run the legitimate side of the family business while I handled the overseas complications. All you had to do was keep a low profile and keep the money flowing. I did, Julian pleaded. Profits were up last quarter. And today, Victor continued, ignoring the interruption, I land in New York to find my company is a laughingstock. You lost $20 million in assets. You got arrested for fraud. And worst of all? Victor leaned forward. The leather of his gloves creaked. You let a blind woman outsmart you. She's not blind, Julian cried out. Victor, listen to me. She can see. She saw the brake lines. She saw the accounts. She's the one doing this. Victor's expression didn't change. He lifted his cane. Do you know why I survived the crash in Macau, Julian? But because you're lucky. Because I don't leave loose ends, Victor said. Suddenly, Victor moved. It was a blur of motion. He didn't hit Julian. He simply extended the cane and pressed the silver tip against Julian's throat, pinning him against the seat. Julian choked, clawing at the cane. His face turned red, then purple. You failed to kill her, Victor whispered, leaning in close. You failed to secure the inheritance. And now, you have exposed me. I can fix it, Julian wheezed. No, Victor said, releasing the pressure just enough for Julian to gasp for air. You are done fixing things. From now on, you are a puppet. I will pull the strings. He turned his gaze to Elena. For the first time, he acknowledged her existence. Elena whimpered. And this one, Victor asked, pointing the cane at her like she was a piece of trash. Is she the reason you became stupid? She... she helps me. Julian gasped, rubbing his bruised throat. She is a liability, Victor decided. Dump her. Tonight. No, Elena cried, grabbing Julian's arm. Julian, don't let him. We're partners. Julian looked at Victor. He looked at the cane. He looked at the cold, murderous intent in his brother's eyes. He shoved Elena away, hard. Get out, Julian muttered, looking down. What? Elena gasped. The car was moving at 40 miles per hour. Victor tapped the partition. The car slowed to a crawl but didn't stop completely. Open the door, Victor commanded Elena. You can't be serious, she screamed. Victor didn't repeat himself. He just stared, a stare that promised a fate much worse than a road rash. Sobbing. Elena opened the door. The rain whipped into the car. She looked at Julian one last time, begging with her eyes. He turned his head away. She jumped. She tumbled onto the wet asphalt, rolling into the gutter in her ruined red dress. Victor closed the door. He adjusted his cufflinks. Now, he said calmly, let's go find your wife. Victor Thorne, Gabriel Stone said, his voice grave. We were back in the penthouse. I was pacing. The adrenaline from the auction crash fading into a cold knot of anxiety. Gabriel was pulling up files on the large wall of monitors. I thought he was a myth, I said, hugging my arms. Julian always said his brother was the black sheep who died in a drug deal gone wrong. That was the cover story, Gabriel explained, typing furiously. Images flashed on the screen, grainy surveillance photos of Victor in Russia, in Brazil, in the Middle East. Victor is the real power behind the Thorne dynasty. Julian is just the face. Victor is the muscle, the brain, the executioner. He enlarged a photo. It showed Victor shaking hands with a warlord. He specializes in aggressive acquisition. Gabriel continued. If a company won't sell, the CEO has an accident. If a union strikes, the leader disappears. He is a ghost. Serena, and you just shined a spotlight on him. I looked at the image of the man who had tossed my bedroom, the man who had burned my divorce papers. He knows I'm alive, I said, and he knows I'm with you. He suspects, Gabriel corrected. But my security is top tier. This penthouse is a fortress. No digital signal gets in or out without my permission. He can't find you here. As if on cue, the lights in the penthouse flickered. Zzz, zzz. The wall of monitors went black. Gabriel. I stepped closer to him. System malfunction, Gabriel muttered, tapping his keyboard. Rebooting. Suddenly, the screens flared back to life, but it wasn't Gabriel's operating system. It was a single video feed. My breath caught in my throat. The camera angle was high. It was looking down at a bed. A hospital bed. In the bed lay an elderly man, hooked up to a ventilator. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow. Uncle Marcus, I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Marcus Waldorf, my father's brother. The only family I had left. The man who was supposed to be safe in a private nursing home in Switzerland. A text overlay appeared on the screen, typing out letter by letter in a stark, white font. Hello, sister-in-law. I hear you have recovered your sight. Good. Watch this. A hand entered the frame, a large hand wearing a black leather glove. It held a syringe filled with a clear liquid. No, I screamed at the screen. Don't touch him, Gabriel. Stop him. I'm trying to trace the IP, Gabriel shouted, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He's bouncing the signal through 10 different countries. The hand moved closer to Uncle Marcus's IV line. The game has changed, Serena. The text continued. Julian wanted your money. I want your compliance. Come home tonight alone. Or Uncle Marcus gets his final medicine. The gloved hand hovered over the injection port. I grabbed Gabriel's arm. We have to do something. He's going to kill him. He's bluffing, Gabriel said, sweat beading on his forehead. If he kills him, he loses his leverage. I don't bluff, the screen typed, as if reading Gabriel's mind. The thumb on the syringe depressed slightly, a drop of liquid bead at the needle tip. You have 1 hour. The screen went black. The silence in the penthouse was heavier than the grave. I stared at the blank monitor. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I looked at my burned hand. The physical pain was nothing compared to this. Julian was a greedy child. Victor was a monster. I have to go, I whispered. No, Gabriel said firmly, grabbing my shoulders. That is exactly what he wants. You walk into that house. You never walk out. It's a trap. Serena. He has Marcus, I yelled, pulling away. He's the only family I have. And you are the only hope your family has of ever getting justice, Gabriel shouted back. Think, Serena. If you surrender, Marcus dies anyway, and you die, and Julian wins. Then what do we do? I cried. Tears of frustration hot in my eyes. We can't just sit here. Gabriel took a deep breath. He walked to a safe built into the wall. He spun the dial and opened it. He pulled out a heavy, matte black object, a gun. No, he said, we don't sit, we escalate. He turned to me, his steel eyes burning with a cold, terrifying resolve. Victor wants a war, we give him a war. He threatened your family, fine. We take away his... How? I asked, trembling. We don't go to the mansion, Gabriel said. We go to the source. Victor just transferred $6 million to pay the police. I traced the account before the screen went black. It's an offshore server farm in New Jersey. He tossed me a Kevlar vest. Put this on, Gabriel ordered. We are going to blow up his money. Literally. I looked at the vest. I looked at the black screen where my uncle lay dying. I wiped my tears. 1 hour, I said, strapping the vest on. Let's burn it all down. 48 minutes. That was the price of a human life. The digital clock on the dashboard of Gabriel's armored SUV ticked down relentlessly. 47:59, 47:58. Every second that vanished took a breath away from Uncle Marcus. We're here, Gabriel announced. He didn't sound like a businessman anymore. He sounded like a soldier. We were parked in the shadow of a derelict shipping yard in New Jersey. Rain hammered against the reinforced glass, masking the world in gray and black. In front of us stood a nondescript concrete warehouse, no windows, no signs, just a massive steel door and a hum that vibrated through the wet asphalt. To the average eye, it was a storage unit. To me, it was the beating heart of the Thorn Empire. The server farm, where Victor laundered billions of dollars in blood money arms deals, human trafficking, political bribes. If we destroy this, Gabriel said, checking the magazine of his suppressed pistol, Victor loses his leverage over his investors. He becomes a liability to the warlords he serves. He won't care about your uncle then. He'll be too busy running for his life. And if we're wrong, I asked, my fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar straps of the Kevlar vest. If we burn his money and he kills Marcus anyway? Gabriel turned to me. The dashboard lights cast hollow shadows on his face. Victor is a businessman. Serena, a cruel one, but a logical one. Money is his oxygen. You cut the oxygen, he stops fighting. He reached over and tightened my vest. His knuckles brushed my collarbone. Stay behind me. If I shoot, you move. If I tell you to run, you don't look back. Understand? I'm done running, I whispered. Good. He kicked the door open. We moved through the rain like ghosts. Gabriel took out the perimeter guard with terrifying efficiency, a swift strike to the throat and a sleeper hold. The man crumpled into the mud without a sound. Gabriel dragged him into the shadows and swiped his keycard. Beep! Click! The side door hissed open. We slipped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. The air inside was frigid. artificial, and dry. It smelled of ozone and burning dust. The hum was deafening here, a choir of 1,000 cooling fans spinning at maximum velocity. Rows of black server towers stretched out into the darkness, blinking with rhythmic blue and green lights. It looked like a graveyard of digital souls. The main console is in the center. Gabriel signaled with a hand motion. We need to override the cooling system, overheat the cores, melt the drives. We sprinted down the aisle, clack, clack, clack. Intruders! A voice shouted from the catwalk above. A gunshot rang out, bang! A bullet sparked off the concrete floor inches from my foot. Cover! Gabriel roared. He tackled me, shoving me behind a row of humming towers. More shots rained down. Bullets tore into the metal casing of the servers, sending sparks showering over us like fireworks. Gabriel popped up, firing 2 controlled shots. Thwip, thwip. A body fell from the catwalk, landing with a sickening thud in the center aisle. There's 3 more, Gabriel yelled over the noise of the fans. I'll draw their fire. You get to the console. I panicked. I don't know how to. You have the master code, Gabriel shouted, reloading. Julian used his birthday for the gate. He's lazy. He probably used the same encryption key for the local override. Go. Gabriel rolled out from cover, firing blindly to suppress the guards. I scrambled on my hands and knees, shards of plastic and metal digging into my palms. I reached the central control desk, a glass-walled heavy-duty station raised on a platform. I ducked under the desk as a bullet shattered the monitor above me. Glass rained down on my hair. I pulled myself up, a keypad, a biometric scanner, and a manual override terminal. I typed in 1984. Access denied? Damn it, I screamed. Serena? Gabriel's voice was strained. He was pinned down behind a server rack 30 feet away. 2 mercenaries were flanking him. He was out of angles. Think like a thorn. Julian was a narcissist. But Victor was a psychopath. He didn't care about birthdays, he cared about power. What was the one thing Victor valued? I looked at the screen. The prompt asked for admin passkey. I remembered the story Julian once told me when he was drunk. About the only thing Victor ever loved. His first dog. The one his father made him shoot to toughen him up. Cerberus, the guardian of hell. I typed it in, Cerberus. Access granted. The screen flashed green. I'm in, I yelled. Initiate the thermal runaway, Gabriel shouted. I reached for the command, but then I stopped. My hand hovered over the keyboard. On the main screen, a video call request popped up. Incoming call V. Thorn. He knew. He was watching us right now. I accepted the call. Victor's face filled the massive wall monitor overlooking the server room. He was sitting in the library of the Waldorf mansion, a glass of wine in his hand. Impressive. Victor's voice boomed through the facility's PA system. I underestimated you, sister-in-law. Let him go, I said, staring into the camera lens, or I burn it all. You have 10 minutes left, Victor said calmly. He panned his camera. Uncle Marcus was still there, the needle taped to his arm. If you destroy my servers, I push the plunger, an eye for an eye. No, I said, my voice trembling but loud. It's not an eye for an eye. Victor, it's an eye for a kingdom. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I didn't initiate the meltdown. Not yet. Instead, I initiated a transfer. What are you doing? Victor's eyes narrowed on the screen. He could see the code scrolling. I'm not just destroying your money, I said. I'm broadcasting it. I'm uploading the entire ledger, every bribe, every murder payoff, every politician you own to the FBI, Interpol, and the New York Times. Victor froze. The glass of wine in his hand stopped mid-air. You wouldn't, he growled. The upload is at 10%. I said, you have 30 seconds to release Marcus. If you don't, I let it finish. You won't just be poor. Victor, you'll be the most wanted man on earth. Kill her! Victor screamed to his men through the audio feed. Kill her now! Two mercenaries popped up from behind the racks, aiming their rifles at me. Bang, bang! They didn't shoot, they fell. Gabriel stood up from the shadows behind them, smoke rising from his gun. He had used my distraction to flank them. Your men are down, Victor, Gabriel said. Walking up the steps to stand beside me, he aimed his gun at the camera. And your secrets are 40% uploaded. Victor's face twisted in pure, unadulterated rage for the first time. The stone facade cracked. He looked at the laptop showing the transfer speed. He looked at Marcus, then he looked at his future crumbling. Stop it, Victor snarled. Stop the upload! Show us Marcus walking out the door, I demanded. Now. Victor slammed the syringe onto the table. He grabbed the phone and barked an order. On the screen, two guards entered the room. They unhooked Marcus. They dragged him confused and weak, but alive out of the room and toward the front door of the mansion. He is outside, Victor hissed. Cancel it. I watched until I saw the rain hitting Marcus's face. I saw the headlights of a taxi that Gabriel must have called remotely pulling up. He's safe, Gabriel confirmed. I looked at the upload bar, 90%. Cancel it, Victor roared. I looked at the cancel button. Then I looked at the delete button. I promised I wouldn't send it to the FBI, I said softly. Good girl, Victor sighed, relieved. But I didn't promise I would keep it for you. I hit delete all! No. Victor's scream was distorted by the speakers. System purge initiated, the automated voice announced. Cooling systems disabled. The hum of the fans died. A new sound replaced it. The rising whine of overheating processors. The servers around us began to spark. Smoke began to pour from the vents. Run! Gabriel grabbed my hand. We sprinted toward the exit. Behind us, the cold room was becoming an oven. The millions of dollars of hardware were melting into useless slag, taking Victor's dirty empire with them. We burst out into the rainy night just as the fire alarm began to wail. We jumped into the SUV. Gabriel slammed on the gas, peeling out of the lot just as black smoke billowed from the warehouse vents. I slumped against the seat, gasping for air. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. We did it, I whispered. We actually did it! You did it, Gabriel said. There was a newfound respect in his voice. He reached over and squeezed my uninjured hand. My phone buzzed. I thought it was a threat from Victor, or a thank you from Marcus. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. I answered it, putting it on speaker. Hello? Serena. The voice was weak, broken, and terrified. Elena, I asked, confused. Why are you calling me? You have to help me, Elena sobbed. The sound of wind and traffic was loud in the background. Victor, he threw me out. But I took something. Before I left the car. I don't care, Elena, I said coldly. Rotten hell. I stole his ledger, Elena cried. Not the digital one, the black book. The physical one he keeps in his jacket. It has the names of the people above him, the circle. I froze. Gabriel looked at me sharply. Why are you telling me this? Because they are coming for me, Elena whispered. And because one of the names in the book, Serena, it's your father. The line went dead. My phone slipped from my hand. My father, I whispered. My father is dead. Gabriel picked up the phone. His face was grim. If his name is in Victor's book, Gabriel said slowly, it means he wasn't just a victim, or he isn't dead. The rain had stopped, leaving New York City glistening like a wet bruise under the sodium streetlights. Inside the armored SUV, the silence was deafening. I stared at my phone, the screen dark. My reflection staring back, a woman in a Kevlar vest, hair matted with sweat and rain, hands trembling not from cold, but from rage. It's a trap, Gabriel said. Breaking the silence, he was driving fast, weaving through the late-night traffic on the FDR Drive. Elena Vane doesn't have a conscience. If she's calling you, it's because she's bait. She sounded terrified. Gabriel, I replied, looking out the window at the blurred skyline. And she mentioned my father. Richard Waldorf died of a heart attack 3 years ago. I saw the body. I planned the funeral. Did you see the autopsy report? Gabriel asked sharply. I paused. No, Julian handled it. He said he didn't want to distress me. Gabriel hit the steering wheel. Exactly. Julian, Victor, they own the coroners. They own the funeral homes. If Richard Waldorf is in Victor's black book, he's either a target, a partner, or he's alive. I finished the sentence, a chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My phone buzzed again, a location pin. Grand Central Terminal. The Whispering Gallery. 15 minutes. She's at Grand Central, I said. It's public. It's open. Maybe she thinks she's safe there. Nowhere is safe from Victor Thorne, Gabriel muttered, checking his sidearm. But if that book exists, we need it. It's the map to the bodies. It's the only way to cut the head off the snake. He drifted the massive car toward the 42nd Street exit. Stay close to me, he commanded. If I say drop, you drop. If I say run, you run. I know the drill, I said, clutching my burned hand. I'm not the princess in the tower anymore. Grand Central Terminal at 2:00 a.m. was a cavern of echoes. The frantic rush of commuters was gone, replaced by the hollow emptiness of marble and gold. A few homeless people slept on the benches, and a janitor pushed a mop lazily across the main concourse floor. The famous astronomical ceiling looked down on us, indifferent. We moved quickly toward the lower level, toward the oyster bar and the famous Whispering Gallery, an architectural quirk where a whisper in one corner can be heard perfectly in the opposite corner, 40 feet away. It was the perfect place for secrets. I saw her immediately. Elena Vane. She was huddled in the far corner of the archway. The red dress that had cost $30 million a few hours ago was now ripped at the hem, stained with mud and grease. She was barefoot, her expensive heels lost somewhere in her flight. She looked small, broken. I walked to the opposite corner. Gabriel stayed in the shadows, scanning the mezzanine, his hand inside his jacket. Elena, I whispered into the curved wall. Across the archway, Elena's head snapped up. She looked around wildly, her eyes wide and bloodshot. Serena, she whispered back. The acoustics carried her voice to my ear as if she were standing right next to me. Is that you? Did you bring the police No police, I said. Just me and the man you tried to bankrupt. I didn't mean to, Elena sobbed, her voice trembling in the stone curve. I just wanted the money, Julian said. He said you were nothing. He said you were just an incubator for the inheritance. Spare me the sob story. I cut her off. My voice was ice. You pushed me down the stairs. You poured boiling water on me. You laughed while I bled. You are not a victim here. Elena, you are a rat jumping off a sinking ship. I know, she cried. I know I'm trash, but I don't want to die, Victor. His men? They are everywhere. I saw them outside my apartment. They have silencers. Serena, they don't make noise. The book, I demanded. Do you have it? Elena clutched a small, dirty canvas bag to her chest. If I give it to you? Will you protect me? Will Gabriel Stone hide me? Give me the book first. No desperation spiked in her voice. Promise me I need a plane ticket. I need a new ID. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had been my best friend in college, the woman who had held my hand when my father died, the woman who had slept with my husband in my bed. I felt nothing, no pity, no hate, just a cold transaction. Come to the middle, I said, hand it over, then we go. Elena hesitated. She looked left, then right. The corridor was empty. Slowly, she stepped out from the safety of the arch. She walked toward the center of the tiled floor, limping slightly. I stepped out to meet her. She smelled of rain and fear. Her makeup was smeared, making her look like a distorted clown. She reached into the bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. It was old, the cover worn smooth by handling. It looked insignificant, but I knew that little book contained enough gravity to crush empires. "Here," she whispered, extending her hand. Her fingers were shaking so hard the book vibrated. "Take it. Just get me out of here." I reached out. My fingers brushed the cold leather. "Serena," she choked out, tears spilling over. "About your dad. I didn't know at first. I swear. I only found out when I read the book in the car." "What did you find?" I asked, gripping the book. "He wasn't a victim," Elena whispered, her eyes locking onto mine with a terrifying intensity. "He was the architect. He built the system Victor uses. He sold you to Julian to seal the partnership." My world stopped. The air left my lungs. "Liar," I breathed. "Check page 42, she said rapidly. "The dowry protocol. It wasn't a marriage, Serena. It was a merger. You were the collateral." I stared at her. My father. The man who taught me to play piano. The man who called me his little star. He sold me. "We have to go." Gabriel's voice cut through my shock. He stepped out of the shadows, sensing something wrong. "Serena, grab the book, now." I pulled the book from Elena's hand. At that exact moment, a soft thwip sound echoed through the hallway, like a heavy book being slammed shut in a library. Elena's eyes went wide. A small red flower bloomed instantly on the center of her chest, right on the ruin of the red dress. She didn't scream. She just looked down, surprised. "Oh," she whispered. Then her legs gave way. "Sniper!" Gabriel roared. He lunged forward, tackling me to the ground. Thwip! Thwip! 2 more bullets chipped the marble floor exactly where I had been standing. "Get down!" Gabriel shouted, dragging me behind a thick stone pillar. I clutched the book to my chest, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked back. Elena was lying on the floor in the center of the hallway. She wasn't dead yet. She was gasping, blood bubbling from her lips. She reached out a hand toward me. "Serena," she gurgled. "Don't move," Gabriel ordered me, holding me down. "He's up on the balcony. If you move, you're dead." I watched my former best friend, my tormentor, my enemy, dying on the cold floor of Grand Central. She was alone, just as she had left me alone in the accident. But she had given me the truth. A shadow moved on the upper balcony, a figure in black. Gabriel pulled his gun and fired blindly upward. Bang, bang, bang! The loud shots shattered the silence, echoing like cannon fire in the enclosed space. The shadow retreated. "We have to move," Gabriel hissed. "The police will be here in 2 minutes, and Victor's cleanup crew will be here in 1. "We can't leave her," I said, my voice cracking. "She's gone, Serena," Gabriel said harshly. "Look." I looked. Elena's hand had fallen. Her eyes were staring up at the astronomical ceiling, fixed on the painted stars she would never reach. The gold digger had finally paid her debt. "We have the book," Gabriel said, pulling me up. "Don't let her die for nothing." I scrambled to my feet. I didn't look back at the body in the red dress. I shoved the leather notebook into my Kevlar vest, right against my heart. We ran. We sprinted down the ramp toward the subway tracks. Gabriel kicked open an emergency maintenance door. We plunged into the darkness of the tunnels, the smell of ozone and rat droppings filling our noses. Behind us, sirens began to wail. We ran along the service catwalk, the third rail humming with lethal voltage just inches away. "Page 42, I whispered to myself as we ran. What? Gabriel asked, breathless. She said, check page 42. We stopped at a maintenance alcove to catch our breath. Gabriel checked the magazine of his gun. I pulled out the book. My hands were stained with Elena's blood. It smeared on the cover. I flipped it open. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, dates, and names. Page 42. The header read, Project Merger. Date October 14th, 2021. Asset: Serena Waldorf. Value 51%. Voting rights. Buyer: Julian Thorne. Seller: Richard Waldorf. Status transfer complete upon marriage. And there, at the bottom of the page, was a signature. A signature I had seen on my report cards, on my birthday cards, on checks for my piano lessons. Richard Waldorf. It wasn't a forgery. It was his unique, jagged R. I slid down the cold concrete wall of the tunnel. The book fell into my lap. He didn't die, I whispered, the horror rising in my throat like bile. He didn't die. He just cashed out. Gabriel knelt beside me. He looked at the page. His jaw tightened. This changes everything, he said quietly. Victor isn't the top of the food chain, Serena. He looked down the dark tunnel, where the lights of an oncoming train were flickering in the distance. Your father is... I laughed, a dry, broken sound that echoed in the dark. I thought I was fighting a monster, I said, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the dirt and blood. But I was just fighting the monster's pet. I stood up. I wiped the tears. I picked up the book. Where are we going? Gabriel asked. My father's grave, I said. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow void that demanded to be filled with vengeance. I want to see if there's actually a body in that coffin, or if it's just full of bricks and my stupidity. Serena, Gabriel warned. If he is alive, he is dangerous. He sacrificed you once. He will do it again. Let him try, I said, stepping onto the tracks as the train approached. The daughter he sold is dead. The woman coming for him is... something else entirely. The cemetery gates of the St. Jude's mausoleum were locked. But for a man like Gabriel Stone, a lock was just a suggestion. The bolt cutters snapped through the iron chain with a dull clank that was swallowed by the howling wind. It was raining again. It seemed like it hadn't stopped raining since I ran out of that kitchen. Are you sure you want to do this? Gabriel asked, tossing the broken chain into the mud. Rainwater dripped from the brim of his tactical cap, masking his expression. Once we open that door, there is no going back. You might see a rotting corpse, or you might see something worse. I have to know, I said, gripping the flashlight. My knuckles were white. I spent 3 years mourning him. Gabriel. I visited this grave every Sunday. I brought lilies. I told him about my life. I cried on this stone. I stepped through the gates. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the rows of marble crypts. The Waldorf family mausoleum stood at the top of the hill, a Greek revival structure that looked more like a bank than a tomb. If he is in there, I whispered, my voice trembling, then I am a monster for disturbing his rest. But if he isn't, then he is the monster. Gabriel finished for me. We walked up the winding path. The silence of the dead surrounded us, heavy and judging. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that felt too loud in the quiet night. We reached the heavy bronze doors of the mausoleum. The name Waldorf was engraved in stone above us. Gabriel inserted a crowbar into the seam of the doors. He grunted, his biceps straining against the fabric of his black shirt. Screech! The metal groaned in protest. The seal of 3 years broke with a sound like a dying animal. The doors swung open. I expected the smell of decay. I expected the dry, dusty scent of death. Instead, a puff of stale, cool air hit my face. It smelled of pine and cleaning polish. We stepped inside. The mausoleum was small, lined with marble shelves. In the center, resting on a stone plinth, was the mahogany casket, gold handles, silk lining. I remembered picking it out. It cost $40,000. Do it, I commanded. My voice didn't sound like mine, it sounded hollow. Gabriel positioned the crowbar under the coffin lid. Turn away, he warned. No, I said. I need to see his face. Gabriel pushed. Crack. The wood splintered. The heavy lid lifted. I stepped forward, holding my breath, preparing myself for the sight of my father's decomposed face. I prepared myself for the horror. But nothing could have prepared me for the insult. The coffin was open, and it was empty. No, not empty. I shined the light into the silk-lined box. It was filled with bricks. Standard. Red construction bricks, wrapped in bubble wrap to stop them from sliding and making noise during the funeral. And resting on top of the pile of bricks, right where his heart should have been, was a single object. A bottle of champagne. Dom Perignon, vintage 1998, the year I was born. And taped to the bottle was a note, a creamy, expensive cardstock with gold embossing. I reached out, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the flashlight. I snatched the note. I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable, the jagged R, the sharp loops. To Serena, it read, "If you are reading this, it means you finally stopped crying and started thinking. Congratulations, you have passed the first test." I gasped, dropping the card. It fluttered into the coffin, landing on the bricks. He knew, I whispered, backing away until my back hit the cold stone wall. He knew I would come here. He planned this. Gabriel picked up the card. He read the rest of it aloud, his voice grim. "Don't be angry, sweetheart. It's just business. You were a depreciating asset. Julian offered a merger that saved the company. I took the liquidity and retired. Consider the inheritance your severance package. Do not look for me. Enjoy the champagne. Love, Dad." A depreciating asset, I repeated. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. He sold me, like a used car. He faked his death, watched me cry at his funeral, watched me marry a monster, all to cash out. "He's a sociopath," Gabriel said, crumpling the note in his fist. "He didn't just sell you, Serena. He bet against you." I looked at the champagne bottle, the 1998 vintage. He used to tell me he was saving it for my wedding. Instead, he left it in his grave as a final joke. "I hate him," I said. The tears didn't come. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, nuclear heat in the center of my chest. I hate him more than I hate Julian. "We have the ledger," Gabriel said. "We can find him." "I don't just want to find him," I hissed, grabbing the champagne bottle by the neck. "I want to bury him, for real this time." Crack! I smashed the bottle against the side of the coffin. Glass and expensive wine exploded everywhere, soaking the bricks and the silk. "Get down!" Gabriel suddenly shouted. He didn't wait for me to react. He tackled me, driving his shoulder into my stomach, slamming me to the marble floor. Zing! A bullet chipped the stone angel statue right where my head had been a second ago. Stone fragments rained down on us. Bang! The sound of the gunshot followed a split second later. A sniper. "They followed us," Gabriel roared, rolling on top of me to shield my body. "Stay down!" "Who?" I screamed, covering my head as another bullet sparked off the bronze doors. "Victor's cleanup crew? Or maybe your father's?" Gabriel pulled his handgun. He aimed toward the open door of the mausoleum and fired 3 shots into the darkness. Pop, pop, pop! "We're pinned down," Gabriel yelled. "There's only one exit." More bullets peppered the entrance. They were using suppressors now. The only sound was the terrifying thwip crack of high-velocity rounds hitting stone. The window, I pointed up. High above the crypt, there was a stained glass skylight. It's too high, Gabriel assessed. The coffin, I shouted. Stand on the coffin. Gabriel looked at me, then at the heavy mahogany box. Go, he ordered. We scrambled up. I stepped onto the pile of bricks, the fake weight of my father, and reached for the ledge of the skylight. A bullet punched through the wood of the coffin, inches from my ankle. Climb, Gabriel fired back, covering me. I grabbed the iron frame of the skylight. I pulled myself up. Ignoring the pain in my burned hand, I smashed the stained glass with the butt of the flashlight. Shards of colored glass rained down like confetti. I pulled myself onto the roof of the mausoleum. The rain hit me instantly, soaking me to the bone. Gabriel, give me your hand. I reached down into the hole. Gabriel holstered his weapon and jumped. I grabbed his wrist. He was heavy, but adrenaline gave me the strength of 10 women. I pulled. He scrambled up, his boots scraping the stone. We lay flat on the roof, breathing hard. Below us, in the darkness of the cemetery, we saw them. 3 figures moving tactically through the tombstones. They were wearing night vision goggles. They're sweeping the entrance, Gabriel whispered. They think we're still inside. We need a car, I gasped. The SUV is blocked. Not the SUV. Gabriel pointed to the service road behind the mausoleum. There, parked in the shadows, was a hearse. The driver was nowhere to be seen, probably smoking a cigarette or paid off to disappear. Can you hotwire a hearse? I asked. Gabriel looked at me. A small, reckless smile touched his lips. Serena, I can hotwire a space shuttle if it gets us out of here. We slid down the back of the mausoleum. Dropping into the mud, we sprinted toward the hearse, using the headstones as cover. Gabriel smashed the driver's side window with his elbow. He unlocked the door and jumped in. I dove into the passenger seat. He ripped the plastic casing off the steering column. Sparks flew. Come on, I urged, watching the shadows moving toward us. The engine roared to life. A V8 engine. Hearses need power to haul the dead. Buckle up, Gabriel said. He threw the car into gear. The tires spun in the mud, then caught traction. We didn't go for the exit. We went through the fence. The massive black car plowed through the wrought iron fence of the cemetery, sending metal bars flying. We burst out onto the main road, leaving the assassins and the empty grave behind us. I looked back through the rear window. The broken fence, the shattered glass, the desecrated tomb. My father was alive, he was rich, and he was laughing at me. I reached into my pocket. I had grabbed one thing before we fled. Not the champagne, not the note. It was a small gold key that had been taped to the bottom of the champagne bottle. I felt the shape of it. It had a number engraved on it, box 404. Gabriel, I said, holding up the key. He didn't just leave champagne. He left a breadcrumb. Why? Gabriel asked. Eyes on the road. If he wants to stay hidden. Because he's arrogant, I said, my eyes narrowing. He thinks I'm too stupid to figure out what this key opens. He thinks I'll pawn it or throw it away. What does it open? Zurich, I said. It's a Swiss bank deposit box key. I saw one just like it in his study when I was 10. I clutched the key. We are going to Switzerland. Gabriel. We are fugitives. Serena, we can't fly commercial. Then we fly private, I said. You have a jet, don't you? I do, Gabriel nodded. But it's being watched. Then we steal one, I said. Or we borrow one from the only person who hates Victor almost as much as I do. Who? Julian. I smiled. A cruel, predatory smile. He's terrified of his brother. If I offer him a way out, a way to get his money back, he'll give us his wings. The stolen hearse rattled as Gabriel pushed it to 80 miles per hour on the wet highway. The smell of funeral lilies and old velvet was suffocating. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping the dashboard with my good hand, the other throbbing under the makeshift bandage I had applied from the first aid kit. We need wings, I said, staring at the rain slashing against the windshield, and I know where to get them. Teterboro is 20 minutes away, Gabriel said, his eyes scanning the mirrors for pursuing headlights. But you can't just walk onto a tarmac and steal a Gulfstream. Serena, it requires clearance, flight plans, keys. I don't need to steal it, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm going to have the owner open the door for me. I dialed Julian's private number, not the business one, the burner phone he used for his mistresses and gambling bookies. It rang once, twice. Who is this? Julian's voice answered. He sounded slurred, drunk, and terrified. Hello, husband, I said calmly. Serena. A gasp, then a frantic shuffling sound. You're alive. Victor said his men trapped you at the cemetery. He said you were dead. Victor lies, I said, just like he lied about giving you the company back. How is it feeling? Julian being the little brother again. Does he let you sit at the big table, or are you back to eating scraps in the kitchen? Shut up, Julian hissed. You don't know anything. He's crazy. He broke my fingers. Serena, 2 of them, just because I lost the auction. I can help you get rid of him, I said. The bait? Silence on the other end. What? I have the ledger. I lied smoothly. Elena gave it to me before she died. It has everything. Julian, the offshore accounts, the codes to the crypto wallets, the names of the politicians Victor owns. If you have this book, you are the king. Victor becomes nothing. I heard his breathing hitch. Greed. It was the only language Julian spoke fluently. You have the book, he whispered. Give it to me. I'll pay you. Anything. I don't want money, I said. I want out. I want to disappear. I can do that, he said quickly, too quickly. Meet me at Teterboro Airport, Hangar 4, in 30 minutes. Bring the G650, fully fueled, no pilots, just you. Why no pilots? Because Gabriel can fly, I said. And because I don't want witnesses. You give me the plane, I give you the book. I fly away, you stay here and destroy your brother. Win-win. 30 minutes, Julian said. The fear in his voice was replaced by a manic hope. If you're lying, Serena, I will kill you myself. Don't be late, Julian, or I send the book to the FBI. I hung up. I looked at Gabriel. He took the bait. Gabriel didn't smile. He looked grim. He won't come alone. Serena, he's a coward. He'll bring muscle. I know, I said, reaching into the glove box and pulling out a flare gun the hearse driver kept for emergencies. That's why we're not going to play fair. Teterboro Airport was a ghost town of aluminum and money. Private jets sat in neat rows like sleeping birds of prey. The rain had turned into a light drizzle, creating a halo around the floodlights of Hangar 4. We ditched the hearse a mile back and cut through the perimeter fence. We approached the hangar on foot, staying in the shadows of the fuel trucks. There it was, the Thorn Enterprise Gulfstream G650, a $60 million machine painted in midnight blue. The engines were already spooling up, a high-pitched whine that cut through the night. Julian was standing at the bottom of the air stairs. He was wearing a trench coat, nursing his bandaged hand. He looked like a wreck, eyes wild, skin pale. Flanking him were 2 bodyguards, not Victor's men. These were cheap hired guns. I recognized them from Julian's gambling days. Stay here, I whispered to Gabriel. Get to the cockpit. I'll distract them. If they raise a weapon, I drop them, Gabriel promised, disappearing under the fuselage of the plane. I took a deep breath. I adjusted my Kevlar vest under my jacket. I walked out into the light. Serena, Julian shouted over the engine noise. He took a step forward, then stopped. He looked at my burned hand, my wet clothes, the dirt on my face. He sneered. You look like a sewer rat. And you look like a man who's about to wet himself, I retorted. Stopping 10 feet away, I held up the leather notebook, Elena's blood still staining the cover. Julian's eyes locked onto the book. Hunger, pure, desperate hunger. "Give it to me," he demanded, extending his good hand. "The plane first," I said. "Everyone off, including your goons." "They stay," Julian said. "For my protection. You have that maniac with you. Where is Stone?" "Gone," I lied. "He abandoned me when he heard Victor was coming. It's just me, Julian." Julian laughed. "Perfect, boys, get the book." The two bodyguards stepped forward, hands on their holsters. Ah. I pulled the flare gun from my pocket and aimed it directly at the fuel truck parked next to the plane. One more step, and we all barbecue. The guards froze. Julian's eyes widened. "You're crazy," he breathed. "I learned from the best." I smiled. "Tell them to back off, or say goodbye to your inheritance." Julian gritted his teeth. "Back off, let her board." The guards stepped back. "You board," Julian commanded. "Leave the book on the tarmac, then you can fly to hell for all I care." "Fine," I said. I walked toward the stairs. I placed the notebook on the wet ground. Julian lunged for it. He fell to his knees, grabbing the book like it was a holy relic. He ripped it open. He saw the pages, the handwriting, the codes. "It's real," he whispered. "My God, it's real." He looked up at me, a twisted grin spreading across his face. "You stupid bitch. You actually gave it to me." "I kept my word," I said, walking up the stairs. "Boys," Julian shouted, standing up, clutching the book. "Don't let the plane leave, shoot the tires, I want her dead." Of course, the traitor never changes his stripes. The guards raised their guns. But before they could pull the triggers, a deafening sound erupted from the plane's engines. Roar. Gabriel throttled up. The sudden blast of jet wash hit the tarmac like a hurricane. Julian was knocked off his feet. The book flew from his hands, pages fluttering in the violent wind. The bodyguards were blinded by the exhaust heat. I stood at the top of the stairs. I wasn't entering the cabin. I was pressing the button to retract the stairs. "Gabriel, go!" I shouted into the intercom. The plane began to move. Julian scrambled on the tarmac, chasing the fluttering pages of the book. "No, my book, my money." Suddenly, headlights swept across the runway. 3 black SUVs armored, military-grade smashed through the hangar gates. Victor had arrived. I saw Julian freeze. He looked at the plane leaving him. He looked at the book scattered in the wind. And he looked at the SUVs bearing down on him. "Serena!" he screamed, running after the plane. "Serena, wait, don't leave me, he'll kill me." I looked down at him from the open door as the plane gathered speed. "You made your choice, Julian." I yelled over the wind. "You chose money over me. Now you die with it." I hit the button. The door sealed shut with a heavy thud. The cabin pressurized. The noise of the outside world vanished, replaced by the smooth hum of luxury. I stumbled into the cockpit. Gabriel was in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the yoke. "Buckle up," he said calmly. "We have company on the runway." I looked out the cockpit window. Victor's SUVs were racing alongside the plane, men hanging out the windows with assault rifles. Ping, ping! Bullets sparked off the fuselage. "Can we make it?" I asked, strapping into the co-pilot seat. "V1, rotate," Gabriel announced. He pulled back on the yoke. The G650 lifted its nose. We defied gravity. We defied Victor. Below us, I saw the tiny figure of Julian Thorne on his knees in the middle of the runway, surrounded by Victor's men. One of the men, Victor himself, stepped out of an SUV. He didn't look at the plane. He walked straight to Julian. He raised a gun. I turned away as we punched through the clouds. "Did you give him the real book?" Gabriel asked as we leveled off at 30,000 feet. I reached into my jacket. I pulled out the real leather notebook. "I gave him a decoy," I said, exhausted. "A diary I bought at a gas station and filled with random numbers while you were hot-wiring the hearse. Julian is too greedy to check the details in the dark." Gabriel chuckled. It was a genuine sound. "You are dangerous, Mrs. Thorne." I told you, I said, looking at the map screen showing our trajectory toward Zurich. Stop calling me Mrs. Thorne. That name died on the runway. On. I leaned back, closing my eyes. We were safe. For now. But I knew this wasn't over. We were flying toward the lion's den. My father was waiting. And in the notebook resting on my lap, on page 404 there was a coordinate. Not a bank account. A location. The Alps, the eagle's nest. Gabriel, I opened my eyes. Change course. What, we're heading to Zurich? No, I said, tapping the book. The bank key is a distraction, just like the champagne. My father isn't hiding in a vault, he's hiding in a fortress. I pointed to the coordinates. Take us to the mountains. The warning wasn't a siren, it was a voice. System failure. The automated female voice of the G650 cockpit announced. It was terrifyingly calm. Hydraulic pressure critical. Control surfaces unresponsive. I looked at Gabriel. His hands were white-knuckle tight on the yoke. Sweat beaded on his forehead, freezing in the rapidly dropping cabin temperature. What does that mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the screaming engines. It means Julian didn't just try to stop us on the runway, Gabriel gritted out, wrestling with the stick. He triggered a kill switch. The flight computer is locking us out. We were at 20,000 feet, descending toward the jagged teeth of the Swiss Alps. Outside the reinforced glass, the world was a swirling vortex of white and gray. A blizzard. Can you land it? I gripped the armrests, my fingernails digging into the leather. No, Gabriel said. He didn't look at me. He was calculating. I can't land, but I can aim. He punched a sequence of buttons on the overhead panel. Fuel dump initiated. A stream of jet fuel sprayed out from the wings, instantly vaporizing in the storm. Serena. Gabriel turned to me. His steel eyes were intense, burning with a desperation I had never seen before. Listen to me. We are going to hit that ridge. The snow is deep. It might cushion the impact, or it might bury us. I don't want to die, I choked out. Not before I kill them. Then don't die, Gabriel shouted as the nose of the plane dipped violently. Brace position, head down now. I curled into a ball. Burying my face in my knees, I wrapped my arms around my head. I felt the G-force pressing down on me, crushing my chest. The ground proximity alarm began to wail. Pull up! Pull up! Hold on, Gabriel roared. Then the world ended. Crunch! The sound of metal tearing was louder than thunder. The plane hit the mountain. I was thrown forward against the harness. The cockpit glass shattered. Freezing wind and snow blasted inside like a physical blow. The world spun. Screaming metal, shattering plastic, the smell of pine and jet fuel. Then darkness. Cold. That was the first thing I felt. A cold so deep it felt like it was freezing the marrow in my bones. I gasped, sucking in a lungful of icy air. I coughed, the taste of copper in my mouth. I opened my eyes. I was hanging upside down. The cockpit was inverted. The windshield was gone. Below me or above me was a field of white snow. Gabriel, I croaked. Silence, only the howling of the wind. I fumbled with the buckle of my harness. My fingers were numb. Useless claws. I hit the release. I fell. I landed hard on the snow, groaning as pain shot through my ribs. I lay there for a second, staring at the gray sky. Snowflakes landed on my eyelashes. Gabriel, I screamed, scrambling to my feet. The fuselage of the G650 was sheared in half. The tail section was gone. We were alone on a desolate plateau, surrounded by towering peaks. I saw him. He wasn't in the pilot's seat. The impact had torn the seat from its bolts and thrown him clear of the wreckage. He was lying in the snow about 20 feet away, a dark shape against the blinding white. No, 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 I chanted, stumbling through the waist-deep powder. My burned hand throbbed, but I didn't care. I reached him. Gabriel was lying on his back. His eyes were closed. His face was pale, almost blending in with the snow. And there was red, so much red. A jagged piece of aluminum from the fuselage was protruding from his left side. Just below the shoulder, it had pierced his tactical jacket. The blood was hot, melting the snow around him into a gruesome slush. Gabriel. I fell to my knees beside him. I slapped his face. Wake up! You don't get to die. You promised. He didn't move. I put my ear to his chest, a heartbeat, faint, erratic, but there. Okay, I whispered, my breath coming in clouds of panic. Okay, you're alive. We have to. We have to stop the bleeding. I ripped off my scarf. I tried to pack it around the metal shard. Gabriel groaned. His eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused. Serena, he rasped. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. I'm here, I sobbed, pressing down on his wound. I'm right here. Leave me, he whispered. The storm. It's getting worse. Find shelter. Shut up, I snapped. I am not leaving you. You saved me from the fire. I am saving you from the ice. I looked around. The main cabin of the plane was still somewhat intact, resting against a rock face about 50 yards away. It was shelter. I have to move you, I said. Don't, Gabriel gritted his teeth. Can't walk, leg broken. I looked down. His right leg was twisted at an unnatural angle. My God. He was broken. The strongest man I knew was broken because of me, because of my revenge, because of my father. I don't care, I said. I stood up. I wasn't Serena the victim anymore. I wasn't the blind girl. I was the woman who burned down a server farm. I grabbed the collar of his jacket. This is going to hurt, I warned him. I pulled. He screamed. It was a raw animal sound that was swallowed by the wind. I cried out too, straining every muscle in my body. He was heavy, dead weight. I dug my heels into the snow. I dragged him inch by inch. One step, pull, scream, cry. One step, pull, scream, cry. The wind whipped my hair into my face, stinging my eyes. My burned hand felt like it was on fire again. Almost there, I panted. Just a little more. It took 20 minutes to move 50 yards. I dragged him into the hollow shell of the fuselage. It was tilted, but it was out of the wind. I collapsed beside him, my lungs burning. I checked his wound again. The scarf was soaked through. Gabriel, I shook him. Stay with me. He looked at me. His gaze was clearer now, sharpened by pain. The book, he whispered. Did you save the book? I reached into my jacket. The leather notebook was there. Safe, dry. I have it, I said. But it's useless if we freeze to death. Your father. Gabriel coughed. He's close. The eagle's nest. It's in this valley. I saw the coordinates. On the nav system. Before we hit. He's close. I looked out the shattered window at the endless white hell, where... North Ridge, Gabriel pointed with a trembling hand toward a peak disappearing into the clouds. A fortress. Hidden. I looked at the peak. My father was up there, sitting by a fire, drinking champagne, while his daughter froze to death in the wreckage of the plane he probably ordered shot down. I'm going to kill him, I whispered. I'm going to rip his heart out. Not today, Gabriel said, his voice fading. His skin was turning a terrifying shade of blue, hypothermia. Serena, I'm cold. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced my heart. No, you stay warm, I said frantically. I looked around the wreckage, luggage, clothes. I crawled to a suitcase that had burst open. Julian's suitcase. I pulled out cashmere sweaters, silk robes, anything I could find. I piled them on top of Gabriel. It wasn't enough. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering. Body heat, I whispered. It was the only way. I unzipped his ruined jacket. I unzipped my own. I lay down beside him on the cold metal floor, pressing my body against his. I wrapped the pile of clothes around us both, creating a cocoon. "I've got you," I whispered. Burying my face in his neck, his skin was like ice. "I've got you, Gabriel." He stopped shivering after a few minutes. That wasn't good. That was bad. That meant his body was giving up. "Serena," he murmured. His voice was so soft I had to strain to hear. "If I don't make it." "Don't you dare start a death speech," I said fiercely, tears freezing on my cheeks. "Take the gun," he said. "Don't let them take you alive. And tell my sister." I tried. "You have a sister?" I asked, trying to keep him talking. "Had," he sighed. "Victor took her. Years ago. That's why. That's why I helped you." My heart broke. He wasn't just a shark. He was a brother looking for revenge, just like me. "We will find her," I promised. "We will find everyone." Hours passed. The storm raged outside, inside. The darkness grew. I was drifting. The cold was numbing my pain, making me sleepy. I knew I shouldn't sleep. If I slept, I died. But my eyelids were so heavy. Thump! 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 A sound. Not the wind, a rhythmic mechanical sound. I forced my eyes open. Thump! 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 Rotors? A helicopter? Rescue. I scrambled out from under the pile of clothes. Gabriel was unconscious. I crawled to the opening of the fuselage. Through the swirling snow, I saw lights. A sleek black helicopter was descending onto the plateau. It didn't have the markings of the Swiss Guard or Mountain Rescue. It had a logo on the tail, a golden eagle, the same eagle on the crest of the Waldorf family. My blood ran cold. It wasn't rescue, it was collection. The helicopter landed. The side door opened. Men in white snow camouflage gear jumped out. They held assault rifles. They moved with military precision toward the wreckage. And behind them, stepping out onto the snow in a fur-lined coat, holding a walking stick, was a man I knew better than my own reflection. Older, grayer, but unmistakable. Richard Waldorf, my father. He stopped 10 yards from the wreckage. He looked at the destroyed plane, then he looked at me, standing in the broken fuselage, shivering, bleeding, and holding Gabriel's gun. He smiled, a warm, fatherly smile that made me want to vomit. "Serena," he called out, his voice carrying over the wind. "You look terrible. Darling, did you have a rough flight?" I raised the gun. My hands shook. "Stay back," I screamed, "or I swear to God, I'll shoot." "With what?" Richard laughed softly. "That toy and aim at your poor old dad." He took a step forward. "Put the gun down, Serena. You have the ledger, I have the heater, and—" He gestured to the men behind him. They raised their rifles. "I have a warm bed and a doctor for your friend. He looks like he has about 10 minutes left." I looked back at Gabriel. He was dying. If I fought, they would kill us both. If I surrendered, Gabriel might live. But I would be back in the cage, a worse cage. "Tick-tock, little star," my father said. "Choose the book or the boy." I looked at the ledger in my pocket, the evidence that could destroy them all. Then I looked at Gabriel's pale face. I lowered the gun. "Let him live," I whispered. "Excellent choice," Richard beamed. "Bring her, and bring the trash she dragged in." I dropped the gun into the red snow. I had survived the fall, but I had just walked into hell. The smell of lavender was the first lie. It was sweet, cloying, and suffocatingly familiar. It was the scent of the potpourri my mother used to keep in the hallways of the Waldorf estate when I was a child. It was the scent of safety. But I wasn't safe. I opened my eyes. I wasn't lying in the red snow. I wasn't shivering in a broken fuselage. I was sinking into a mattress that felt like a cloud, covered by Egyptian cotton sheets with a thread count higher than the population of the town I grew up in. I sat up, gasping. My body screamed in protest. My ribs ached, a dull, throbbing reminder of the crash. I looked down at my hands. My burned right hand was wrapped in clean, sterile gauze, my clothes the ruined. Blood-stained rags I had worn on the mountain were gone. I was wearing a silk nightgown, pale blue. I looked around the room. My breath hitched in my throat. It was my bedroom, not a hotel room, not a prison cell. It was an exact replica of my bedroom from the Hamptons estate, down to the smallest detail. The canopy bed, the vanity table with the antique silver brush set, even the framed photo of my mother on the nightstand. But when I looked out the window, there was no ocean. There was only jagged, white rock and swirling snow. We were thousands of feet up, perched on a cliff edge like a bird of prey waiting to dive. "The eagle's nest," I whispered. I swung my legs out of bed. The floor was heated marble. I walked to the heavy oak door and tried the handle. It turned. I stepped out into a hallway that stretched endlessly, lined with tapestries and suits of armor. It was silent, a tomb for the living. "Miss Serena?" I spun around. A maid in a crisp black uniform stood there, her head bowed low. She didn't look at me. She looked at the floor, trembling slightly. "Where is he?" I demanded. My voice was raspy. "Mr. Waldorf requests the pleasure of your company for dinner," the maid recited, her voice devoid of emotion. "He is waiting in the grand hall." I asked where he is. I stepped closer, grabbing the maid's arm. "Gabriel, the man who was with me, is he alive?" The maid flinched at my touch. The guest is in the medical wing. Miss, Dr. Braun is operating. That is all I know. Please, do not make me late. Mr. Waldorf does not like lateness." I released her. Gabriel was in surgery. That meant he was alive, for now. "Lead the way," I said. The grand hall was a cavernous room dominated by a fireplace large enough to roast a whole ox. The fire crackled and roared, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls. Above the mantel hung a massive oil painting not of an ancestor, but of the world map, with pins stuck in various capitals. In the center of the room sat a long mahogany table set for two. Crystal stemware glittered in the firelight. At the head of the table sat Richard Waldorf. He looked exactly as I remembered him from the funeral, or rather, from the casket I had just smashed open. He was wearing a velvet smoking jacket, sipping a glass of dark red wine. He looked healthy, vibrant. The last 3 years of death had treated him well. "Serena," he smiled, setting down his glass. He didn't stand up. "You look ravishing. Blue always was your color." "Where is he?" I walked straight to the table, gripping the back of the empty chair opposite him. "If Gabriel dies, I will burn this place to the ground with you inside it." "So dramatic," Richard chuckled, slicing a piece of rare meat on his plate. "Sit down. Eat. You've had a long day. Crashing a $60 million jet is tiring work." "I'm not hungry," I hissed. Richard stopped cutting. He looked up. His eyes, the same shade of icy blue as mine, hardened. The fatherly mask slipped just a fraction. I said, "Sit down." It wasn't a request. It was a command backed by invisible snipers. I pulled out the chair and sat. "Good," Richard resumed his meal. "Try the venison. It was hunted this morning on the lower ridge. Very tender." I stared at the meat. It was red, bloody, just like the snow. "Why?" I asked, the question that had been burning a hole in my soul since I found the ledger. "Why did you do it? Why did you sell me to Julian? Was the money that important? You were already rich." Richard sighed, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. You think this is about money? Oh, Serena, you are still thinking like a civilian. He gestured to the room, to the luxury, to the map on the wall. Money is just fuel. This is about architecture. Architecture, I spat. You call destroying my life architecture. I built a system, Richard said calmly, a network of influence that controls senators, judges, and warlords. But every system needs a failsafe, and every dynasty needs an heir. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. 3 years ago, you were weak, Serena. You were a pampered princess who thought the world was kind. You wanted to open an art gallery. You wanted to marry for love. He sneered at the word love. If I had left the empire to you then, Victor Thorne would have eaten you alive in a week. He would have married you, taken the assets, and then arranged a skiing accident. You were soft. So you decided to ruin me. I decided to forge you, Richard corrected, his voice rising with a twisted passion. I needed to break you down to your foundations so I could build something stronger. I sold you to Julian because I knew Julian was incompetent. I knew he was cruel but stupid. I put you in a cage with a rat, not a tiger, to see if you would learn to bite. My hands clenched into fists under the table. You watched me suffer. You watched them humiliate me. You watched me go blind. And look at you now. Richard spread his arms. You didn't die. You didn't break. You regained your sight. You outsmarted Julian. You bankrupted Victor. You stole a plane. You raided a tomb. He smiled, a look of genuine, terrifying pride. You aren't the soft girl who cried over a dead bird anymore. You are a killer, Serena. You are a Waldorf. I am nothing like you, I whispered. Aren't you? Richard raised an eyebrow. You burned down a server farm today. You left Julian on a runway to face his executioners. You are exactly like me. You just needed a push. I did it to survive. I said, I did it to get justice. Justice is just revenge with a better marketing team. Richard dismissed. But we are getting off track. I didn't bring you here to reminisce. I brought you here for a job interview. I will never work for you. Oh, I think you will. Richard pressed a button on a small remote control next to his plate. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a large flat-screen monitor. The screen flickered to life. It showed a sterile, white operating room. In the center, under bright surgical lights, lay Gabriel Stone. He was intubated, his chest rising and falling rhythmically with the ventilator. A team of surgeons in blue scrubs was working on his leg and his side. Dr. Braun is the best trauma surgeon in Europe, Richard said, taking a sip of wine. But he has a very unsteady hand when I tell him to. I stood up, knocking my chair over. Don't you touch him. Sit, Richard said softly. Or Dr. Braun might nick the femoral artery. He would bleed out in 30 seconds. I froze. I looked at the screen. I saw the scalpel hovering over Gabriel's exposed skin. Slowly, painfully, I sat back down. What do you want? I asked, defeated. I am dying, Serena, Richard said matter-of-factly. I looked at him. He looked fine. Pancreatic cancer. He tapped his chest. Stage 4. Money can buy time, but it can't buy eternity. I have 6 months, maybe less. He poured himself another glass of wine. I need a successor. Not Julian, he's a fool. Not Victor, he's a rabid dog who needs to be put down. I need someone who knows the system. Someone who has felt the pain of the world and learned to inflict it back. He pointed the knife at me. I want you to take the throne, Serena. I want you to run the circle. You want me to become a crime lord? I asked, disgusted. I want you to become a kingmaker, Richard corrected. And in exchange, I give you the world. I give you the names of the people who really hurt you, not just Julian, the people above him. And if I refuse, then the surgeon's hand slips. Richard shrugged. Gabriel dies. And you? Well, I'll keep you here in this lovely room until you change your mind. It might take years. By then, the world will have forgotten Serena Thorne ever existed. I looked at the screen. Gabriel was helpless. He had flown into a mountain for me. He had taken a bullet for me. I looked at my father, the man who saw his daughter as an asset. I picked up my fork. I stabbed the piece of venison on my plate. I cut it. The red juice ran onto the white porcelain. "If I do this," I said, my voice cold and dead, "if I take your empire, I start by cleaning house." Richard smiled. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. I would expect nothing less. "And Victor?" I asked. "He's still out there. He's coming for us." "Victor is a problem," Richard admitted. "He is currently mobilizing his private army to storm this mountain. He wants the ledger back, and he wants my head for betraying the family." Richard reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out the black leather notebook, the real one I had brought onto the plane. His men must have taken it from me while I was unconscious. He slid it across the table back to me. "Victor thinks he is the hunter," Richard whispered. "But he doesn't know you are the new CEO." He raised his glass. "Welcome to the board of directors, Serena. Your first assignment is simple." "What is it?" I asked, taking the book. "Victor will be here at dawn," Richard said, checking his Rolex. "Kill him." I stared at the book, then at the screen with Gabriel, then at the fire. I picked up my wine glass. "At dawn," I said. I drank. The wine tasted like blood, but for the first time, I didn't feel like vomiting. I felt powerful. If I was going to be the devil's daughter, I might as well own hell. Dawn didn't break over the Alps. It shattered. I stood on the balcony of the eagle's nest, the freezing wind whipping my hair against my face. I wasn't wearing the blue silk nightgown anymore. I was dressed in a white winter tactical suit my father had laid out for me, blending perfectly with the snow. In my hand, the weight of a Sig Sauer P226 felt heavy, cold, and necessary. "They are crossing the perimeter." Richard's voice crackled in my earpiece. He was safe in his panic room, watching the monitors like a god playing chess. 3 Black Hawk helicopters, unmarked, heavy assault teams. "I see them," I said, lifting the binoculars. Black shapes rose from the valley floor like vultures, cutting through the morning mist. They weren't hiding. Victor wasn't here for a stealth extraction. He was here for a massacre. "Remember, Serena," Richard whispered, his voice sounding almost bored. "This is your final exam. If you die, you weren't worthy of the name Waldorf." "If I die," I muttered, flicking the safety off, "I'm coming back to haunt you first." Thwup, thwup, thwup. The lead helicopter banked hard, its side door sliding open. A man with a rocket-propelled grenade launcher leaned out. "RPG," I screamed into the radio. "Take cover." Whoosh, boom. The rocket slammed into the east wing of the chateau. Stone and glass exploded outward. The floor beneath my feet shook violently, knocking me against the stone railing. Dust and debris rained down, coating my white suit in gray ash. "Medical wing," I gasped, my heart stopping. That was the medical wing. "Gabriel." "Protect the asset," I yelled to the house guards positioned on the lower terrace. "Forget the gate. Fall back to the infirmary now." I didn't wait for them. I kicked open the balcony doors and sprinted into the hallway. The chateau was chaos. The alarms were blaring a high-pitched wail that drilled into my skull. Expensive vases shattered on the floor as mercenaries in white snow camo rappelled through the skylights. Crash! A rope dropped right in front of me. A boot followed. A soldier slid down. Landing in a crouch, he raised his rifle. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I didn't tremble. I raised my gun and fired. 2 shots to the chest. Bang! Bang! The man crumpled backward, sliding across the polished marble floor. I stared at him for a fraction of a second. I had just killed a man. And the terrifying part was that I felt nothing. No remorse, no sickness. Just the recoil in my wrist and the urge to keep moving. "One down," I whispered. I ran. The corridor to the medical wing was a war zone. Smoke billowed from the hole in the wall where the RPG had hit. The sprinkler system had activated, raining cold water down on the fires, turning the hallway into a misty, slippery hell. "Gabriel!" I screamed, sliding around a corner. Two of Victor's men were trying to breach the heavy oak doors of the infirmary. They were setting a breach charge. "Hey!" I shouted. They turned. I dove behind a grand piano just as they opened fire. Bullets shredded the mahogany wood, sending splinters flying into my hair. Rat-a-tat-tat. The sound was deafening. "Suppressing fire," one of them yelled. "Flank her." I was pinned. I had a handgun. They had assault rifles. I was going to die behind a Steinway piano. Then, the infirmary doors exploded. But not from the outside, from the inside. Boom! An oxygen tank had been rigged to blow. The explosion threw the two mercenaries backward, slamming them into the opposite wall. Through the smoke and the flames, a figure emerged. He was limping heavily, dragging his left leg. He was wearing a hospital gown stained with fresh blood, open at the back, revealing the bandages wrapped around his torso. In his hand, he held a scalpel in a reverse grip and a stolen pistol. Gabriel Stone. He looked like a revenant rising from the grave. His face was pale, sweat dripping from his forehead, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. Gabriel. I stood up from behind the piano. He saw me. He didn't smile. He pointed his gun past my ear and fired. Bang! Behind me, a mercenary who had been creeping up on the balcony fell dead. Gabriel stumbled, his knee giving out. I rushed forward, catching him before he hit the wet floor. His skin was burning hot. "You should be in a coma," I scolded him, wrapping my arm around his waist to support him. "The noise woke me up," Gabriel gritted out, wincing as he put weight on his bad leg. "And your father's anesthesiologist, though, is cheap." "We have to go," I said, checking the magazine of my gun. "Victor is here. He's tearing the place apart looking for the book." "The book?" Gabriel asked, eyeing the pocket of my tactical vest. "I have it," I said, "and we are going to use it to buy our lives, or end his." "Where is Richard?" Gabriel looked around at the burning hallway. "Watching," I said bitterly, pointing to a security camera blinking in the corner. "Eating popcorn, probably." "We're on our own." Gabriel nodded. He looked at the dead mercenaries. He bent down, groaning in pain, and picked up an assault rifle from one of the bodies. He checked the chamber. "Fine. I prefer it that way." "Can you walk?" "For you." Gabriel looked at me, his steel eyes softening for a brief second. "I'd run." We fought our way to the great hall. It was the only defensible position left. The thick stone walls and the narrow entrances made it a natural fortress. But we weren't the only ones heading there. As we barricaded the main doors with a heavy antique table, the wood splintered inward. Crack! A massive boot kicked the door again. "He's here," I whispered. The doors burst open. Victor Thorne stepped through the smoke. He looked like a demon of winter. He wore a long black trench coat over body armor. His face was scratched, bleeding from the debris, but he was smiling. Behind him stood 6 elite soldiers, weapons trained on us. Gabriel raised his rifle, but he was shaking. He was losing too much blood. "Drop it," Victor commanded. His voice boomed through the hall, echoing off the high vaulted ceiling. "Or I cut him into pieces while you watch." I looked at Gabriel. He shook his head. "Don't." But I saw the laser sights dancing on Gabriel's chest. 4 red dots. I slowly lowered my gun. "Smart girl." Victor sneered. He limped forward, leaning on his silver-tipped cane. "You have caused me a lot of trouble, Serena, my server farm, my money, my brother." "Julian was weak," I said, standing tall in front of Gabriel. "I just sped up natural selection." "True," Victor chuckled. He stopped 5 feet away. "But you stole something that belongs to me, the ledger. Give it back." If I give it to you, I said, my hand hovering over my vest pocket, you kill us anyway. If you give it to me, Victor promised, I will kill you quickly. If you don't, well, have you ever seen a man skinned alive? It takes days. He looked at Gabriel, starting with him. Wait, I said. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the black leather book. Victor's eyes lit up. Bring it here. I took a step forward, then another. I was within arm's reach of him. Closer, Victor hissed. I held the book out. Victor reached for it. Now, I screamed. I didn't hand him the book. I threw it, not at his hand, but up into the air, toward the roaring fireplace behind him. Victor's eyes followed the book instinctively. For a split second, he was distracted. That was all I needed. I dropped to my knees, sliding across the floor. Gabriel. Gabriel didn't need instructions. He fired. Not at the soldiers, he couldn't take 6 of them. He fired at the massive crystal chandelier hanging directly above Victor's head. Ping! Snap! The steel cable severed. 2 tons of crystal and iron plummeted down. Victor looked up. His scream was cut short. Crash! The sound was like a bomb going off. The floor shook. Crystal shards exploded like shrapnel, slicing into the soldiers standing nearby. Dust billowed up in a blinding cloud. Go, go, go! Gabriel roared, providing cover fire as the surviving soldiers scrambled in confusion. I grabbed Gabriel and we dove behind the massive stone fireplace. Is he dead? Gabriel shouted over the ringing in my ears. I looked around the corner. The chandelier lay in a ruined heap of twisted metal and glass. Underneath it, a pool of dark blood was spreading rapidly across the floor. But the cane, the silver-tipped cane, was sticking out of the wreckage. And it was moving. No, I gasped. He's wearing armor. He's alive. A hand, bloody and gloved, clawed its way out from under the crystal. Then a shoulder. Victor pulled himself free. His face was a mask of blood. His trench coat was shredded. One of his arms hung uselessly at his side. But in his other hand, he held a detonator. You miss, Victor gurgled, blood spraying from his mouth. You miss. He pressed the button. Beep! Nothing happened. No explosion. Victor looked at the detonator, confused. He pressed it again. Beep! Looking for this. A voice echoed from the balcony above the great hall. We all looked up. Richard Waldorf stood there. He was holding a glass of champagne in one hand and a signal jammer in the other. He looked down at the carnage in his living room with a look of mild distaste. Really, Victor, Richard called down. Rigging my home with C4, that's terribly rude house etiquette. Richard, Victor screamed, pointing his gun up. You traitor! You tried to steal my kingdom, Richard said coldly. So I let my daughter break your toys. Richard pressed a button on the wall. Suddenly, steel shutters slammed down over every window and door in the great hall. Clang, clang, clang. We were sealed in, me, Gabriel, the surviving mercenaries, and a half-dead Victor. What are you doing? I shouted up at him. The final test, Serena. Richard's voice came over the intercom now. 2 enter, 1 leaves. Kill him. And the doors open. Fail. And I flood the room with neurotoxin gas in 5 minutes. A hiss started from the vents. Greenish gas began to seep into the room. You're insane, I screamed. I'm your daughter. Prove it, Richard said. The lights on the balcony went out, leaving him in shadow. I looked at Victor. He had pulled himself to his feet, leaning against a pillar. He looked at the gas, then at me. The soldiers were coughing, confused, their loyalty wavering. Kill them, Victor ordered his men, pointing his gun at me. Kill them and shoot the vents. The soldiers turned their weapons on us. Gabriel was out of ammo. He slumped against the fireplace, his face gray. Serena, run. No, I said. I stood up. I picked up the silver-tipped cane Victor had dropped. It was heavy. It was a sword cane. I twisted the handle. A gleaming steel blade slid out. I stepped out from behind the fireplace. The gas swirled around my ankles. "Hey!" I shouted at the soldiers. "He's a dead man walking. My father controls the exits. You kill him. You live. You shoot me. You die in this gas." The mercenaries hesitated. They looked at the sealed doors. They looked at Richard's empty balcony. They knew the Waldorf reputation. They lowered their guns. Victor realized he had lost his army. He let out a roar of pure, primal rage. He raised his gun at me. I didn't run. I charged. I ran through the gas, screaming, channeling every ounce of pain, every humiliation, every tear I had shed in the last 3 years. Victor fired. Bang! A bullet grazed my shoulder. I didn't stop. I swung the sword. Victor tried to block with his gun, but he was slow, injured by the chandelier. The blade bit deep. And then silence. Only the hissing of the gas. Victor Thorne fell to his knees. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock. "You," he whispered. I stood over him, panting, the sword dripping red onto the white tactical suit. "I told you," I whispered back, leaning close to his dying face. "I'm not blind anymore." I pushed him. He fell backward into the wreckage of the chandelier. The hissing stopped. The heavy steel doors of the great hall ground open. Richard's voice came over the speaker, smooth and terrifyingly cheerful. "Congratulations, CEO Waldorf, you're hired." I dropped the sword. I turned to Gabriel. He was unconscious again. "Get a medic!" I screamed at the surviving mercenaries. "Now." They scrambled to obey me, not because of my father, but because they had just watched me slaughter a monster. I looked up at the dark balcony. I had won the battle, but the war against my father had just begun. 3 weeks. That was how long it took to scrub the blood off the marble floors of the eagle's nest. It was also how long it took for the world to believe that Victor Thorne had died in a tragic skiing accident and that his unstable brother, Julian, had vanished due to grief. The world is stupid. It believes what the highest bidder tells it to believe. And now I was the highest bidder. I stood in the private elevator of the Thorne Tower in Manhattan. The numbers on the display climbed steadily: 40, 50, 60. I wasn't wearing the white tactical suit anymore. I wasn't wearing the floral dresses Julian used to pick out for me. I was wearing a black Yves Saint Laurent tuxedo suit, sharp enough to cut glass, with diamond earrings that cost more than the GDP of a small island nation. My hair, once loose and wavy, was slicked back into a severe, high ponytail. My lips were painted a deep, blood red. Ding! The elevator doors slid open. The boardroom was full. 12 old, white men in gray suits sat around the oval table. They were the board of directors of Thorne Enterprises. The men who had laughed when Julian called me useless. The men who had helped Victor launder his money. They stopped talking as I walked in. Mrs. Thorne, Mr. Henderson, the chairman, stood up. He adjusted his glasses, looking at me with a mix of confusion and condescension. "We weren't expecting you. This is a closed meeting to discuss the succession crisis." I didn't answer. I walked to the head of the table, Julian's old seat, Victor's old seat. I pulled the chair out. The leather creaked in the silence. I sat down. I placed the black leather ledger on the table. Thud. "You can't sit there," Henderson spluttered, his face turning pink. "That chair is reserved for the acting CEO, since Julian is missing and Victor is gone. The board has voted to appoint me as—" "You are fired," I said. My voice was quiet, calm, but it carried across the room like a gunshot. Henderson blinked. "Excuse me?" "You are fired," I repeated, enunciating every word. "And not just you, Smithers, Johnson, Polanski, All of you. I opened the ledger to a marked page. Mr. Henderson, I read, running a manicured finger down the column. You have been skimming 2% off the construction contracts in Jersey for 5 years. You used the money to buy a villa in Tuscany for your mistress, while your wife thinks you're at a golf retreat. Henderson's jaw dropped. How? Where did you get that? Mr. Smithers. I turned the page. You approve the use of substandard concrete in the low-income housing projects to save money. The same concrete that cracked last winter. You pocketed the difference. I looked up. The room was deathly silent. This book, I tapped the leather cover, contains the soul of this company, and it is rot, pure rot. You can't prove any of this. Henderson stammered, sweating now. This is blackmail. No, this is a hostile takeover. I smiled. It was a cold smile, a Waldorf smile. I own 51% of the voting stock. I acquired Victor's private shares this morning via a shell company in Zurich. I am not asking for your permission to lead. I am evicting you. I pressed the intercom button on the table. Security? The doors burst open. 4 guards, my guards, handpicked from the mercenaries who surrendered at the Eagle's Nest, marched in. Escort these gentlemen out, I ordered, waving my hand dismissively. If they try to take their laptops or phones, break their fingers. You can't do this, Henderson screamed as a guard grabbed him by the collar. Do you know who I am? I made this company. You are a parasite, I said, not even looking at him. And I am the exterminator. Get him out of my sight. I watched them being dragged out, kicking and screaming. The remaining board members, the ones I hadn't named, sat in terrified silence, staring at their hands. The rest of you, I said, leaning back in the chair. You stay, because you are too scared to steal. And that is exactly how I like my employees. I spun the chair around to face the window. New York City lay beneath me. It looked small. Meeting adjourned. I didn't stay to gloat. I had somewhere else to be, somewhere much more important. The private medical suite in the penthouse was quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. It smelled of antiseptic and lilies I had banned lavender. Dr. Braun was waiting for me outside the door. He looked tired. He had flown from Switzerland with us on my private jet. How is he? I asked, stripping off my black blazer and handing it to an assistant. Dr. Braun took off his glasses and cleaned them nervously. He is awake. Miss Waldorf, the fever has broken. The bullet wound in his shoulder is healing nicely, but... But what? I demanded, my heart skipping a beat. The crash. Dr. Braun lowered his voice. The impact caused a compression fracture in the lumbar spine, L1 and L2 vertebrae. We did everything we could to relieve the pressure, but... Say it, I whispered. He has no sensation below the waist, Dr. Braun said. Paralysis, likely permanent. The world tilted on its axis. Gabriel, the man who kicked down doors, the man who carried me through the snow, the man who stood between me and a bullet. He would never walk again. Get out, I said to the doctor. Miss, he needs rest. I said get out. I slammed my hand against the wall. Leave us alone. The doctor scurried away. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my hair. I put on the mask of the queen. I couldn't let him see me cry. He would hate pity. I opened the door. Gabriel was lying in the bed, propped up by pillows. He was looking out the window at the gray sky. He looked thinner, paler, but his steel eyes were the same, sharp, alert. He turned to me as I entered. He didn't smile. So, he said. His voice was raspy, unused. I hear you're the boss now. I am, I said. Walking to the bedside, I resisted the urge to grab his hand. I fired the board. I took the chair. The transition is complete. Congratulations, he said dryly. Your father must be proud. My father is a means to an end, I said. How are you feeling? Gabriel looked down at his legs under the white sheet. He tried to move them. Nothing happened. The sheet remained perfectly still. A flicker of pure, devastating pain crossed his face. Not physical pain, soul pain. I can't feel my toes, Serena, he whispered. I know, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Doctor, Braun told me, it's the spine. Gabriel laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. So that's it. I'm a cripple, a liability. He looked at me with cold, hard eyes. You should have left me on the mountain. At least then I would have died on my feet. Don't say that, I snapped. It's the truth, he shouted, sudden anger flaring up. He punched the mattress. Look at me. I am useless to you now. I can't fight. I can't protect you. I can't even walk to the bathroom. I am just a broken toy. Serena, throw me away. Are you done? I asked quietly. No, I'm not done. I am a warrior, not a pet. Tears of frustration welled in his eyes. Go on. Leave. Go run your empire. Find a new bodyguard. Find a man who is whole. I walked forward. I grabbed his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. Listen to me. Gabriel Stone, I hissed. You think I kept you alive because I need a bodyguard? I can hire 1,000 bodyguards. I can buy an army. So, I leaned in closer, our foreheads touching. I kept you alive because you are the only person in this entire godforsaken world who didn't sell me. You are the only one who saw me, not the asset. And now I'm half a man, he choked out. You are more man in that bed than Julian or Victor ever were standing up, I said fiercely. And listen to me carefully. I am rich. I am richer than God right now. I will buy the best neurosurgeons in the world. I will fund experimental research. I will build you an exoskeleton if I have to. I kissed his forehead. You will walk again, Gabriel. I swear it on my father's grave. The real one. I'm going to dig for him soon. Gabriel looked at me. The anger slowly faded, replaced by a profound, exhausted sadness. Why, he whispered. Because. I pulled back, smoothing the hair from his forehead. A queen needs her king, even if he has to sit on the throne for a while. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again, relentlessly. I pulled it out, unknown number. I knew who it was. Answer it, Gabriel said, watching me. He's watching. I accepted the call. Touching speech. Richard Waldorf's voice came through the speaker. He wasn't in the room, but he was always in the room. Very sentimental, a bit expensive, promising to cure paralysis, but manageable. What do you want, Richard? I asked coldly. Just checking on my investment, Richard said cheerfully. You handled the board well, brutal, efficient. I like the part about the finger breaking. I learned from the worst, I replied. But now comes the hard part. Richard's voice dropped. Cleaning house is easy. Expanding the territory. That requires blood. I gave you Victor, I said. We had a deal. Victor was a pest. Richard dismissed. But there is a new threat. Someone who heard about the power vacuum and wants to step in. An old rival from the south, the cartel. I'm listening, I said, walking to the window. They are sending an envoy to the Winter Gala tomorrow night. A man named Dante Moretti. He thinks he can intimidate the new girl boss. What do you want me to do? I don't want you to negotiate, Serena, Richard said. I want you to send a message that the Thorn Empire is not for sale. Understood, I said. Oh, and Serena? Richard paused. Don't get too attached to the cripple. If he doesn't walk in 6 months, well, we can't have weakness in the inner circle. I might have to put him down myself. Click. I stared at the phone. My hand shook with rage. What did he say? Gabriel asked. I turned back to him. I smiled. A fake, bright, terrifying smile. He said we have a party to go to tomorrow. I walked to the closet. I pulled out a garment bag. Rest up, Gabriel, I said. You're coming with me? I can't go to a gala in a wheelchair, he spat. You won't be in a wheelchair, I said, unzipping the bag to reveal a sleek, custom-made suit and a cane. A cane with a hidden blade, just like Victor's. You'll be sitting at the head of the table, right next to me. I walked back to the bed and sat on the edge. They think we are weak, I whispered, taking his hand. Tomorrow, we show them that even broken, we are sharper than they are. Gabriel squeezed my hand. It was weak, but it was there. Yes, ma'am, he whispered. The Met Gala is usually a parade of peacock celebrities and socialites desperate for 5 seconds of flashbulb fame. But tonight, the Winter Gala was a Shark Tank. I rolled Gabriel's custom-made titanium wheelchair into the Temple of Dender. The ancient Egyptian sandstone glowed under the amber mood lighting. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fear. Every head turned. The whispers started immediately, rustling like dry leaves. Is that her, the new Thorn CEO? Look at the man. Is that stone? I heard he's a vegetable now. She brought a cripple to a cartel sit-down. She's insane. I didn't look at them. I kept my chin high, my hand resting possessively on the shoulder of Gabriel's tuxedo jacket. I wore a gown of liquid gold, tight enough to show I was a woman, armored enough to show I was a weapon. Gabriel looked devastatingly handsome in black velvet, his legs covered by a silk throw, his hands resting on the silver-headed cane across his lap. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a king on a mobile throne. They are staring, Gabriel murmured, his eyes scanning the perimeter, counting the security guards. Let them stare, I whispered back. They've never seen a predator that doesn't need to stand up to bite. We reached the head table. It was set for 3. And sitting there, sprawling in the center chair with his muddy boots resting on the white tablecloth, was Dante Moretti? He was a mountain of a man, with a thick neck, a gold chain buried in chest hair, and a smile that looked like a row of tombstones. He was eating a lobster tail with his bare hands, grease shining on his chin. Well, well, Dante boomed, tossing the lobster shell onto the floor. If it isn't the little princess and her broken toy. The music in the hall seemed to stop. The other guest senators, judges, tech billionaires froze, watching the spectacle. Mr. Moretti? I said smoothly, signaling a waiter to replace the soiled tablecloth. You seem to have mistaken the Metropolitan Museum for a barn. Please, remove your feet. Dante laughed. A wet, throaty sound. He didn't move his boots. You got a lot of mouth for a girl who just inherited Daddy's money. Dante sneered. He looked at Gabriel with mock pity. And you brought a babysitter. What's the matter? Stone? Forget how to walk? Or did Victor blow your balls off too? Gabriel didn't flinch. His expression remained stone cold. I may be sitting, Dante, but I'm still taller than you when you're on your knees begging. Dante's face darkened. He slammed his fist on the table. Bang! The silverware jumped. Listen to me, Dante hissed, leaning forward. The South is mine. The ports are mine. Your father is dying, and you are just a placeholder. I'm taking 80% of the Thorn territory. Tonight, you sign the deal, or you don't leave this party. Is that a threat? I asked, taking a seat calmly. It's a promise, Dante grinned. I have 10 men in this room. You have a cripple. I have something better, I said. I picked up the wine bottle of vintage Chateau Margaux. I poured a glass for myself, then one for Dante. I have leverage. Leverage, Dante scoffed, grabbing the glass. What leverage? I own the police captain outside. I know, I said, sipping my wine. That's why I bought your wife. Dante froze. The glass stopped halfway to his lips. What? Maria, I said softly. Beautiful woman, hates your guts. She called me this morning. She told me about the warehouse in the Bronx, the one where you keep the product before it goes to the streets. Dante's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Check your phone, Gabriel said. Dante pulled out his phone. He opened a message. A video played. It showed the Bronx warehouse engulfed in flames. You bitch! Dante roared. He threw the phone across the room. He reached into his jacket. Don't, Gabriel warned. His hand tightened on the cane. I'm going to kill you right here, Dante screamed, spitting saliva. I don't care about the cops, I'll snap your little neck. He lunged across the table, his massive hands reaching for my throat. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Click, swish. Gabriel moved with terrifying speed. He pressed a button on the cane. A 12-inch steel blade shot out from the tip. With a surge of upper body strength that shocked everyone in the room, Gabriel swung the cane. Thwack! The blade didn't hit Dante's chest. It slammed through his right hand, the hand reaching for a gun, pinning it to the solid oak table. Ah! Dante screamed, the sound echoing off the Egyptian ruins. Blood sprayed onto the white flowers. Gabriel twisted the handle. Dante howled, dropping to his knees beside the table, trapped by his own impaled hand. Sit, Gabriel commanded. The room erupted into chaos. Screams, guests scrambling for the exits, but nobody intervened. In this world, you don't stop a shark feeding. Dante whimpered, clutching his wrist, his eyes wide with shock. You're a cripple, how? I'm paralyzed from the waist down, Dante, Gabriel said coldly, leaning forward in his wheelchair. But my arms, they work just fine, and they have been very bored. I stood up. I smoothed my gold dress. I walked around the table to where Dante was kneeling, pinned like a butterfly in a display case. I picked up his steak knife. Please. Dante gasped, sweat pouring down his face. Serena, Mrs. Thorne, let's talk. I'll give you 50%, 50%. You misunderstood the negotiation, I said, twirling the knife. I didn't come here to share territory. I came here to close the border. Richard will hear about this, Dante cried. He won't let you start a war. Richard sent me, I whispered. I grabbed a handful of Dante's greasy hair and yanked his head back, exposing his throat. This is the message, I announced to the room, my voice ringing clear and deadly. The Thorne family does not negotiate with terrorists, we exterminate them. No, wait, Dante begged. I didn't wait. I didn't slit his throat, that was too messy for a gala. Instead, I plunged the steak knife into his left eye. Squelch! Dante's body convulsed once, then he went limp. I let go of his hair. He slumped against the table leg, the knife protruding from his socket. His hand still nailed to the table by Gabriel's cane. Dead. Silence descended on the Temple of Dender, absolute, terrified silence. I pulled a white silk handkerchief from my clutch. I wiped a speck of blood from my hand. I dropped the handkerchief on Dante's body. Gabriel, I said calmly. We're leaving. The food here is terrible. Gabriel retracted the blade with a click. He wiped the steel on Dante's jacket. Yes, ma'am, he said. He spun his wheelchair around. We walked out through the center aisle. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Men who controlled billions of dollars looked at the ground, afraid to meet my eyes. Women who had whispered about the cripple were now staring at Gabriel with fear and awe. We reached the exit. The cold winter air hit my face. You did good, I whispered to Gabriel as the valet brought the car. I aim to please, Gabriel said, his hands still tight on the wheels. But Serena, that was reckless. He could have shot you. He wouldn't dare, I said, helping him into the car, because he looked at you and saw a chair. He didn't see the man sitting in it. My phone buzzed. I knew who it was. I answered. Bravo. Richard Waldorf's voice said. He sounded weak, weaker than yesterday. Messy, but effective. The stock price just went up. Is the cartel handled? I asked. For now, they are terrified of the Gold Widow. That's what they are calling you on Twitter already. I hate it, I said. Get used to it, Richard coughed. A wet, hacking cough. Serena, come to the eagle's nest, immediately. Why I just finished your dirty work? Because, Richard wheezed. It's time. The doctors say I have days, not months. I need to give you the key. What key? I have the ledger. The ledger is just the accounting, Richard whispered. The key controls the nukes, metaphorically speaking, and literally. I'm on my way, I said. I hung up. Where to? Gabriel asked. Back to the mountain, I said, staring at the blood under my fingernail. The king is dying, and I want to make sure he stays dead this time. The eagle's nest was silent. The mercenaries were gone. The servants had fled. The only sound was the howling wind of the Alps battering the stone walls, trying to reclaim the fortress for nature. I pushed Gabriel's wheelchair through the debris of the great hall. The crystal chandelier, the weapon we had used to crush Victor, had been swept aside, leaving a jagged scar on the marble floor. He's in the library, Gabriel whispered. His face was pale. The flight from New York had taken a toll on his broken body, but his grip on the armrest was iron. The thermal sensors show only one heat signature, and it's fading. Good, I said, my heels clicking rhythmically on the stone. I don't want a fight. I want a coronation. We reached the massive oak doors of the library. They were unlocked. I pushed them open. The room smelled of old paper, brandy, and something sweet and rotting, sickness. Richard Waldorf sat in a high-backed leather wing chair facing the fireplace. A blanket was draped over his legs. An IV drip stand stood next to him, the clear liquid counting down the seconds of his life. Drip, drip, drip. He didn't turn around. You're late, he rasped. His voice was a shadow of the booming baritone that used to command boardrooms. I was busy cleaning up your mess in New York, I said. Parking Gabriel's chair a safe distance away, I walked around to face him. My father looked like a ghost. His skin was translucent, his eyes sunken into dark hollows. The cancer had eaten the Titan and left only a husk. But the eyes, the blue Waldorf eyes, were still sharp, malicious. Dante Moretti, Richard asked, struggling to lift his head. Dead, I said. And his territory is ours. The cartel surrendered an hour ago. Good, Richard smiled, revealing teeth stained with blood. Good. He looked at Gabriel, his lip curled in disgust. And you brought the pet. I told you, Serena. A queen does not have pets. She has subjects. He is not a pet, I said coldly. He is my partner. There are no partners, Richard suddenly shouted. A burst of hysterical strength. He coughed violently, hacking into a handkerchief. When he pulled it away, it was soaked red. Listen to me, he wheezed. The world is a jungle. You think you have won because you killed a few thugs? No. The real power isn't in bullets, it's in secrets. He reached into his robe with a trembling hand. He pulled out a small, heavy object. It wasn't a gun. It was a USB drive, solid gold, encrusted with a single black diamond. The key, I whispered. This, Richard held it up, the firelight catching the gold, contains the blackmail data for every G7 leader, every central bank director, and every media mogul in the Western Hemisphere. It is the leash that controls the dogs of war. He looked at me with intense, feverish desperation. It is yours, Serena. It is the crown jewels of the Waldorf Empire. I reached for it. Ah, Richard pulled it back. Not yet. He placed the drive on the small table between us. Then, he pulled a gun from under his blanket, a snub-nosed .38 Special. He didn't point it at me. He placed it next to the drive. The key has a biometric lock, Richard explained. It is coded to my heartbeat. When I die, it wipes itself, unless... Unless what? Unless I transfer ownership, Richard said. But the system requires a protocol, a clean slate protocol. He pointed a shaking finger at Gabriel. The system requires you to eliminate your greatest weakness, to prove you are detached from human sentiment, to prove you are me. You want me to kill him, I stated flatly. He is a cripple, Richard spat. He is a liability. He knows your secrets. He saw you weak. As long as he lives, you are just a girl in love. Kill him, and you become a goddess. The room was deathly quiet. The fire popped. Snap. I looked at the gun. Then I looked at the gold drive, the power to control nations. Then I looked at Gabriel. He wasn't begging. He wasn't crying. He sat straight in his wheelchair, his hands resting on his paralyzed legs. He looked at me with total peace. Do it, Gabriel whispered. What? I blinked. He's right, Serena, Gabriel said softly. I am broken. I can't walk. I can't fight. If that drive gives you the world, then I am a small price to pay. He looked at the gun. Take it, build your empire, I'm ready. My heart broke and healed in the same second. He was willing to die for my ambition. That was why he was dangerous. That was why he was essential. I picked up the gun. The metal was cold. Richard grinned, a skeletal, triumphant grin. Yes, yes, daughter. Do it. Become the monster I made you. I raised the gun. I aimed it at Gabriel's chest. Gabriel closed his eyes. I pivoted. Bang! The gunshot was deafening in the small library. Gabriel's eyes snapped open. He was alive. On the table, the gold USB drive shattered into 1,000 sparkling fragments. Richard screamed, No, you stupid girl, you destroyed it, you destroyed everything. I tossed the smoking gun onto his lap. I don't need your secrets, Richard, I said, my voice ringing with the power of 1,000 storms. I don't need your blackmail. I don't need your leash. I walked closer to him, leaning down until our faces were inches apart. I am not you. You ruled through fear because you were small. You needed leverage because you had no loyalty. I pointed to Gabriel. I have loyalty, I have fearlessness, and I have the one thing you never had. What? Richard gasped, clutching his chest, his eyes rolling back. What do you have? Time, I whispered. I stood up. I walked to the IV drip. I didn't pull the plug. I didn't increase the dose. I simply turned off the heater. The morphine will keep flowing, I said, but the cold will find you, just like it found me on that mountain. Serena, Richard wailed, trying to reach for me. Don't leave me. I am your father. My father died 3 years ago, I said. You are just a depreciating asset. I walked to Gabriel's wheelchair. I grabbed the handles. Let's go home, Gabriel. With pleasure, Mrs. Thorne, Gabriel said, a small smile playing on his lips. We walked out of the library. Behind us, Richard Waldorf began to scream. He screamed my name. He screamed for mercy. He screamed at the ghosts. We didn't look back. I closed the heavy oak doors, thud. The screaming was silenced. 6 months later. The distinct whir-click-whir sound echoed through the penthouse of the new Waldorf stone tower in Manhattan. I stood by the window, holding a glass of champagne, not the vintage my father left in the grave, but a new one, a better one. I turned around. Gabriel Stone was walking toward me. He wasn't running, he wasn't dancing, but he was walking. His legs were encased in sleek, black carbon fiber braces, an experimental exoskeleton developed by the biotech firm I had bought the day after my father died. He held a cane, but barely leaned on it. Whir, step, click, whir, step, click. He stopped in front of me. He was eye level again. He was tall, imposing, whole. Show off, I teased, sipping my drink. I have to practice, Gabriel said, his voice deep and warm. The wedding is in 2 days. I refuse to roll down the aisle. He reached out and took the glass from my hand. He set it down. He wrapped his arms around my waist. The metal of the exoskeleton pressed against my silk dress, cold and hard, but his hands were warm. Are we ready? He asked. For the wedding. For the world, he corrected. I looked out the window. Below us, the city lights twinkled, but further out, invisible threads connected us to London, Tokyo, Dubai. The Thorn Empire was gone. The Waldorf Empire was gone. We had built something new, something based not on blackmail, but on absolute, terrifying competence. We controlled the logistics, the tech, the energy. We didn't need to force leaders to bow. They bowed because we owned the ground they stood on. Victor is dust, I whispered. Julian is a memory. My father is a cautionary tale. I looked up into Gabriel's steel eyes, the eyes that had watched me when I was blind, the eyes that had seen me when I was invisible. We are ready, I said. Gabriel kissed me. It wasn't the kiss of a servant to a master. It was the kiss of a king to his queen. Long live the queen, he whispered against my lips. Long live us, I corrected. I turned back to the window, looking at my reflection. The girl who cried in the dark was gone. The gold widow stared back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see a pretender. I saw the truth. And the truth was beautiful.